Scott, I'm going to start just because I don't want to start too late. Hi.
Recording in progress.
You'll just raise your hand and you can ask questions.
Were you able to join, Councillor Farrell?
Hello, everyone. We're going to get started. It's a little bit noisy out there. Hello, I'm Andrea Kelly, the chairman of the Land Use Committee. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Land Use Committee tonight. We're going to start out with item number 119-24, which is a request to allow a retaining wall exceeding 4 feet in height in a setback at 12 Clark Street. First, we'll hear from the Planning Department.
Okay, good evening. This is the petition for 112 Clark Street. The only item of relief needed is that they want to have retaining walls exceeding 4 feet within their rear setback. The criteria to consider is whether or not this is an appropriate location for the proposed work, whether this proposed construction as developed and operated will not adversely affect the neighborhood, and whether this proposal will be a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, that the access to the site over streets is appropriate for the number and types of vehicles involved for the proposed construction, and that the proposed construction is not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. I'll look at the location. It is directly in between Newton Highlands and Newton Center, right off of Center Street, where there is that triangle. The property is located in the SR3 zone within the MRT overlay, but the MRT, like the other VCOD zones, is not entitled those who opt in to any additional relief when it comes to retaining walls. So this petition is under SR3 as the property has not yet opted in, but it is near a variety of zones in a vicinity of the center of Newton Highlands and Crystal Lake and Newton Center. I'll look at the site plan. So before I talk about the work that needs relief, you can see a little bit better on the right other work that they're planning to do. There's a proposed shed. They're adding a dormer to the house, a proposed patio that extends from the middle of the house out to the side setback, and in addition of a mudroom on the northeast corner of the house. There's also a second proposed driveway going in. None of this work requires any relief. It is just the retaining walls. The retaining walls total about 5.5 feet, and they're about 72 feet long, extending almost from the corner of the yard down to where the garage is. What this will allow the petitioners to do is to flatten out that space in the backyard so that it's easier for them to construct the patio and have a little bit more backyard space that they can have some flat, more recreational type space. As there is a decent grade on the site. You can see it a little bit more on the drawing on the right with those elevation lines going up about 6 feet within about 20 feet. So it's decently steep in that backyard, and these retaining walls will allow them to flatten out in between the back of the house and where those retaining walls are located. And I will stop the share and turn it over to the committee.
Thank you, Joe. Before I ask to hear from the petitioner, I would like to introduce and welcome the committee members, the staff, and other councillors who are here tonight. In the chamber, we have Councillor Leary from Ward 1, Councillor Lucas from Ward 2, Randy Block from Ward 4. Online, we have Andrea Downs on Zoom from Ward 5, Ellen Leibovitz from Ward 6, Stephen Farrell from Ward 7, and I'm from Ward 3. We also have Councillor Albright and Councillor Malachy online joining us, and the city staff from the Planning Department, Kat Kemet, Katie Wewell, Joe Iadenisi, who just gave the report. We have Jonah Temple from Law Department, and our clerk, Scott Matthews. Now, would somebody from the petitioner like to talk after that presentation from planning?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Versme. I'm the owner of 12 Clark Street and the petitioner. I think Joe described perfectly what we're trying to achieve there. I think in the docket there were pictures of the current landscape with a kind of dirt slope that's taking over more and more, and we would love to put something to be able to retain that. That's primarily the goal of this retaining wall.
Thank you very much. I presume you'll be available if there are any questions for you.
Obviously.
Okay, we'll take it into committee. I see Councillor Downs has her hand up. Oh, yes, thank you. Would any members of the public like to speak on this? I apologize for my foggy-headedness. I've been sort of sick for a couple days. I'm going to try and get it together. Anyone either in the chamber or online want to speak to this project? I don't see any members from the public. I see two hands from two councillors up, though. Councillor Downs?
Hi, thank you. So I'm familiar with this neighborhood, but I wanted to just double check. The slope behind the house at 12 Clark is ascending, right? So you're not building a platform for your yard. You're instead sort of digging out and holding back the dirt in the backyard.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. That would be my only concern, would be the opposite of that. This one seems to me to be minor and advantageous to the neighbors to have the dirt not eroding out of their yard and into your yard.
Is that it for you, Councillor Downs? Thank you. Councillor Albright, do you have something that you would like to say now before we hear from other committee members, or would you like to wait until after we take it into committee?
No, actually, Councillor Downs had my concern. I hadn't been there to look at it, so I didn't know which way the slope went. Just wanted to be sure it didn't affect the drainage on another property, but it sounds like it does not.
If I may, something that I totally meant to cover, and immediately as I turned it back over, realized I should have said, this has had engineering review, and two things have to happen before this gets a building permit. Is they need to provide a drainage report, and then they also need to provide drainage for that wall. And then it is also the recommendation of engineering that they also provide a landscaping plan. So apologies for not mentioning that earlier, but since the topic of drainage came, I wanted to jump in.
Thank you, Joe. I was going to mention both those things too, that we can expect before a permit is issued. All right, anyone else on the committee? Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm familiar with this site. I do have a question for the petitioner, Mr. Versme, if I pronounced that correct.
Versme, perfect.
Versme. Okay, all right. In the plans, it says that you are installing a second driveway to the right side of the house. Just wondering, what is the need for the additional driveway when there's one already in the rear of the house?
Yeah, so that's for that is on plan for later. That's not something we're gonna do right now. But the thing is that the current driveway is remote from the house, and we have young kids. We'd like to be able to enter through the house with the closer driveway. So that's why we will try to do that in the future.
In the future?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That was my only issue with it. Just the second driveway in a single-family house is not something that we approve, but listening to planning's report and the zoning relief that's requested, that is not before us. It's not, no zoning relief is needed. So I guess, you know, the retaining wall is all that you need relief for. So if it's to allow more playing space in the rear yard for your family, by all means, and good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Anyone else from the committee? Councillor Farrell.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. Does that mean that the driveway is not up for consideration right now? And you will come back again for another appeal to install a driveway?
You're asking that question to the petitioner through me?
Through you. I apologize. Yes,
That's okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Versme?
Yeah, that's so. To be very honest, I don't know what authorization we will have to require for the driveway, but we don't plan to do it this year. So if we have to go back in front of that committee, we'll do that before we plan for it.
If I may step in, this is Katie Wewell from Planning. We typically encourage applicants to show all site work they are considering doing on their site plans. That way, when the applicant, does choose to pursue that driveway, it will be consistent with the special permit plans instead of sort of opening it up and having to take a closer review. This way, it's already been reviewed for zoning. But it does not require any zoning relief. This would be as of right if it did not require the special permit for the walls.
So, Ms. Wewell, because it's on the plan and it would be approved, if anyone does want to speak about that at this time or have it removed from the plan, now is the time, even though it's by right, but they're saying they're not going to do it right away?
I mean, like I said, so if it were removed from the plans and then the applicant wanted to come back to pursue that, it could be at a minimum a consistency ruling. It just sort of opens it up to review again, whereas we encourage the applicant to show all work they are thinking of doing on the site plan at special permit. But considering it's by right, I don't know what jurisdiction the committee has. I would probably defer to Attorney Temple on that question as well, but just wanted to clarify.
Mr. Temple, would you like to say something to that right now? I'm going to go back to Councillor Farrell and let him finish his questions and comments, but if you have an opinion on when might be the right time to talk about that second driveway curb cut, which we understand would be by right, but we also don't generally like to see second curb cuts and second driveways. Councillor Temple? Lawyer, counselor, attorney Temple?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think this falls into a little bit of a gray area. I don't think it should be the primary focus of the committee's review tonight. I wouldn't want you to hang your hat on, approval or denial of this petition on a by right aspect of it. But it's a valid thing for you to consider and ask questions about.
Okay, that's a tiny bit clearer. Councillor Farrell?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do feel like I probably didn't make it any easier, but I think I can chime in further as the committee kind of gets into the discussion.
All right, thank you. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you very much, Chair. In the spirit of encouraging people to show full plans and landscaping and so forth, I guess I would offer, if you would consider when you come back for the driveway, that it be a permeable surface. We're very concerned and increasingly concerned about water runoff. And it would just be nice if this second driveway were of a permeable surface to help in that battle against stormwater and flooding. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Lobovitz, then Councillor Leary.
I just wondered if there were any neighbor comments, abutters.
We did not receive any, and nobody either in the chamber or on Zoom tonight raised their hand to speak up.
Thank you.
I'll probably come
I,
back.
I, ju-
Sorry?
I can just mention that I can just mention that I talked to the close neighbors who gonna see the work beforehand to make sure they didn't have any objections.
Did any of them tell you that they were in favor or opposed or have comments about it?
They were mostly in favor or non-opposed. So yeah, and they're aware they could be here or they could have talked to me beforehand. So
Okay, it's very helpful for people to put those thoughts into writing to be part of the public record, just for future reference for anyone. It helps us, it gives us a little indication. It's not our only criteria of all, but it's helpful to hear from neighbors and abutters. I'll probably come back to you, Councillor Lobovitz, for a motion when we're done talking about it. Councillor Leary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm also not in favor of second driveways, and I think Councillor Farrell made an important point about permeable surface, which I would agree on. But I do want to just mention that if the by right driveway would still be subject to our stormwater rules and would have to be permitted and reviewed, and it's then the whole lot would have to be checked for how much more impervious surface would be on the lot. So it does get reviewed, if just not by us.
Thank you. No other comments from anyone? Councillor Lobovitz.
Move that the public hearing be closed. Is that the appropriate motion?
That would be a great first motion.
Okay.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
No one opposed? Anyone opposed?
And then we approve the project subject to the concerns that people have about permeability, as long as all this is compliant with the requirements. Is that?
Not quite, but I see where
Okay.
you're going with it.
Okay.
Let's take a look at the proposed council order, and the planners can mention whether there is anything that could be adapted to reflect what we talked about. I think not. I thank Councillor Leary for pointing out to us that some of us who have concerns about the second driveway and the permeability, that will be, if they do come back to do that later, that will be looked at by engineering. So it's not like we're giving a blanket approval for it right now. But I would like Mr. Versme to get the message strongly tonight that second driveways and that sort of thing, second curb cuts are not something we tend to look favorably on, particularly just for the convenience of having a closer place to park in front of the house. But if you, Mr. Versi, would like to make comments about how you might be willing to alter this while we're talking about conditions or before we vote it in, that would certainly be welcome too. Planning, could you show us what the proposed council order would be?
Okay. So the site is an appropriate location for the proposed series of retaining walls exceeding 4 feet in the rear setback, given the walls are placed where there is a 6-foot grade change to the rear of the dwelling. The site is subject to 2 front setbacks, limiting the space available for a rear yard due to the placement of the dwelling on the lot. The proposed construction of a series of retaining walls as developed and operated will not adversely affect the neighborhood, given the retaining walls are to the rear of the property with limited visibility from the street. The proposed construction of a series of retaining walls will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, as they do not affect site parking or circulation. Access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and number of vehicles involved for the proposed construction of a series of retaining walls. And then we have standard conditions for this.
Okay. At this time, without any further comments from the public or the city council or the petitioner, we are ready to vote on this. Yes.
Was a motion to approve made?
Councillor Lobovitz said when the time was right, he was making the motion.
Okay.
The time is right. He was a little more long-winded about what he was saying. It was, in a way, it's just a simple motion to approve this project right now. I was thinking that perhaps the petitioner might want to change something about the wording of that second driveway, but he didn't speak up.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Farrell,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lovovitz,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck, Mr. Versme. The next item is number 115-24, a request to amend special permit number 178-13 to allow a nonprofit educational use and to waive 3 parking stalls at 14 Collins Road, which is, as many of us in this room know, Union Church in Waban. Let's hear from planning.
All right, good evening. My name is Kat Kemet. I am on the planning department for the city. This is petition 115-24, a special permit for 14 Collins Road. The site has an existing special permit that allows them to operate a daycare in the church space, and an additional permit was granted in 2013 that allowed for an increase in student enrollment and a waiver of 8 parking stalls associated with that increase in students. The petitioner now proposes to allow a further use. They want to allow the Winchester School of Chinese Culture, a nonprofit educational program, to operate an after-school program on the site. This requires an amendment to their existing special permit to allow a nonprofit educational use that needs a parking waiver and an additional waiver of 3 parking stalls for that use. When reviewing this request, the council should consider whether the site is an appropriate location for the use, if the requested parking waivers will adversely affect the neighborhood, if the waivers will create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, if access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and number of vehicles involved, and if literal compliance with the required amount of parking is impracticable due to the nature of the use or the location, size, depth, shape, or grade of the lot, or that an exception would be in the public interest or in the interest of safety. The property is located in Waban at the intersection of Beacon Street and Collins Road. The majority of this area, including the subject parcel, the site, is zoned SR2 with a mix of BU1 public use and MR3 as well in this area. The surrounding land use is a mix of residential, commercial, religious, and educational uses, as well as some open space. And the property abuts the Waban T station at the east side. The property consists of a 41,302 square foot lot, which is improved with a church building constructed in 1911. It has had several additions to add on classrooms and some other spaces in 1926 and 1950. And the site has 3 curb cuts off of Collins Road and 22 parking stalls in total. They're sort of sprinkled around the perimeter of the site. The site has 2 long-standing uses, which is the religious use, Union Church, and a daycare, the Riverside Children's Center. The petitioner proposes to add and legitimize this 3rd use, a nonprofit educational use that needs relief as a nonprofit use that requires a parking waiver and a waiver of 3 stalls. No new structures or parking is proposed as part of the petition. It's really just the use that needs the relief. In terms of operations, it's a cultural after-school program that operates on Newton Public Schools schedule. So it would be after the public schools get out. The student capacity is proposed at 51 students and 3 staff members. And the hours that the church is operational vary quite a bit. Peak demand is on Sunday. For the Children's Center, they operate 7:45 to 6 roughly. So there might be some overlap with this proposed use in the afternoon and the others on the site. Those times should be pretty rare where there's a significant conflict though, and the program has a history of communicating with students and their guardians to stagger pickup and drop off that seems to work pretty well. To legitimize this use, a waiver of 3 parking stalls is required for the 3 staff members. There are 22 parking stalls already on the site. There's also street parking in the vicinity. As an alternative to driving, public transit options are also available at the T station, which is very close to the building. Should this petition be approved, the planning department encourages the petitioner to continue to work with the church and with the daycare to stagger the schedules in the case that there is any potential parking conflict. But overall, we are not concerned with the proposed use or the waiver of 3 stalls. Seems like a pretty modest request for the waiver of 3 stalls, and the use is complementary to others on the site and seems to work well with the programming they have in place. That's all for now. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kemet. Is anyone here from the church or the after-school program, the petitioner, ready to speak? Come to the microphone, which you'll need to turn on down at the base of the black microphone part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, and members of the committee. My name's Frank Lasky. I'm here as the petitioner in my role as a trustee of the Union Church in Waban. Trustees are the owners of record of the church building at 14 Collins Road. With me here are Reverend Megan Berkowitz, who's now the senior pastor at the Union Church in Waban, Leon Yu, who's the principal of the Winchester School of Chinese Culture and is in charge of the operation of the after-school program, which is the subject of our special permit request. First of all, I'd just like to express my appreciation to the director and the planners in the planning department for their attention to this petition and some really helpful guidance in preparing the application. The presentation today and the planning department's memorandum and the zoning review memorandum provide a comprehensive analysis and set forth clearly, I think, the reasons for the approval of this petition. I just want to emphasize that the after-school program described has been operating successfully since the time we were made aware that the church needed to have a special educational use permit brought to our attention by the inspection department over a year ago. And we, Principal Yu and the program have been managing volunteer parking and efficient drop-off and pickup without any adverse effect on the available parking in the neighborhood. If members of the committee have any questions or request any more details on the operation of the program, Principal Yu can provide that. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of parents who have participated in the program, which is a collaboration with the public schools of Newton, principally the Ainger School, which is diagonally across from us on Beacon Street, and other schools in Newton. And I'd like to make one point before I turn it over for questions, just one point. That is, as the planning department mentioned in their memo, this is clearly a beneficial use of this church property, compatible with other uses we have, which are educationally oriented. And it'll be an asset to the nearby small businesses in the village square. It's also an important resource to the parents in the Newton schools and in our community. And I just, for example, during the recent school closure, due to the work stoppage, the church and the after-school program made our facilities available to parents for a full day for the whole duration of the strike. And in that way, I think what demonstrated the value of the church building being more than a Sunday worship facility, and reflect our commitment to the community, education of the youth in the community, whether they're members of our church or not. And I'll turn this over to Principal Yu if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lasky. Welcome, Principal Yu.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce how we manage it daily of the operation. And we have like 50 students involve 40 families. But average every day we have 18 students, and we have 3 teachers and 1 teacher assistant. And the students come from different school, and from 8 different elementary school in Newton. And because Newton is very big, it's spread out, so the school, the distance from the school to the site is some far and some very close. So when the school over, parents carpool, the students come to the school, and they come at different time. So when they come, they drop the student in the front of the church door, and then they leave, and other cars come from other school come in. So it's very smoothly, and there's no problem. And during the pickup time, and we have 2 places to pick up the parents can pick up the student. If the weather is good, and a teacher will bring the student to the Angia playground, so the parents can go to the Angia school to pick up the student, so it won't create any traffic there, that area. And if the weather is not good, the student will stay in the church, and before the school year started, we talked to the parents about the parking and about the trafficking. So we asked them come at a different time. So the parent also spread out from the 4:30 to 6 o'clock. And so some come early, some come late. And before they come, and they will text our teachers, say that I'm going to come now, and I will arrive. For example, I will arrive at 5 o'clock, and then our teacher will tell the student that your parents will come over at 5:30. Now you have 20 minutes, so you can play 15 more minutes, and 5 minutes pack your stuff. And when the parents come in front of the door, and they will text the teacher again, the teacher bring the student out, and then they leave. So it runs very smoothly, and that there are no traffic jam, and also, and we didn't receive any complaint from the child care in the same building or from the neighbor. And so everything is arranged good. And for the teachers, and they work 3 hours, usually 3 hours. So the first 2 hours, they arrive at the school around 3:10 to 3:40 when they arrive at the school. So at that time, the parents from Angia, they have already gone. And so there are a lot of parking around the Collin Road and Beacon Street. On Collin Road, there are 2 hours parking, so our teacher parked there for 2 hours, and then they come out and park the car again to other place for 1 hour. And so for now, the parking is okay for the teachers. Yeah, this is how we run. Then we're fine right now.
Thank you, Ms. Yu. While you're there, before you sit down and you come back, I have a couple of questions just for me, and it may clarify for other people.
Okay.
So the after-school students are elementary school students, kindergarten through 5th grade, from a variety of Newton public schools?
Yeah, it's from, this one is from Mason Rice, Zuras, and Angia Countryside, and Memorial Spalding, and Baldwin. Yeah, they come from different schools.
Okay. And children get there by being carpooled by the parents. And
Yeah.
you have a very complicated, but it sounds like successful way of staggering drop-offs and pickups. And as I understood from Mr. Lasky, without knowing you needed a special permit. You've already been in operation, so this has been happening successfully already.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is everything I asked clear or correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's thank you very much. I'm going to now ask if there are any members of the public who would like to speak or ask questions about this project. If they're in the chamber, you can come up to where Principal Yu is. I see that happening, but thank you, and I think you may be asked more questions by committee members when we get to that, but we'll let this parent or neighbor speak, so come up and you can talk from there.
Hello, committee members. My name is Betty Wong, and I'm one of the parents, and I have a 5th grader, 3rd grader that attend the program, and they've been going since kindergarten, and they've been attending this site. It opened in 2019, I believe. When it first opened after the pandemic, I was one of the parents driving my own kids, so I got to experience kind of doing the drop-off, and now my kids are being picked up by one of the teachers, and they meet the kids at the school and bring them over. So as it was already mentioned, the distance to the program varies, so the drop-off is staggered. So it's been very convenient. I never had a problem finding parking spaces either when I was dropping my kids off or when I was picking up. I'm very aware, and I see the kids at the daycare and their parents every night. But I think that all the families have different schedules. So sometimes the parents might come earlier if their kid has an activity in the afternoon, or if the parent needs to work later, they might come closer to 6. So every family has their own schedule in terms of when they're picking up. So it really has not been a problem at all finding parking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the chamber who would like to speak? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Serena To. I have 2 kids who attended, well, one already graduated. He's a junior at South, and then I have a middle schooler. So there are more than elementary kids who go to Winchester, and I see Winchester as more than an after-school program because it provides kids with Chinese tuition as well. And to me, that has been very great help since we moved here in 2017 from Singapore, because that was our biggest concern since we moved here. Will my child be able to continue learning Mandarin and be able to speak Mandarin? And the thing about Winchester School, even though they have been moving to many locations over the years, the teachers have never changed, and the principal has always been the same. So our trust in the school has been very high. And then back to the parking, same as Betty, I drop my kid once he gets home from middle school, and then I pick him up at about 5-ish. I rarely run into any other cars when I drop him off. And when I pick him, usually he's already at the door waiting to pick me up. So traffic has never been an issue.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other members of the public. Let's take it into committee. Councillor Downs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is my ward and my neighborhood. And I can confirm what people are telling you about the lack of difficulty in finding a parking spot near the Union Church or near Ainger School, particularly once kids are being let out for school or in the afternoon. And as you heard, a number of kids will be walked across the street from the Ainger playground, which will reduce car trips quite a bit. Parking minimums such as this that we have in our zoning code are pretty much arbitrary. Nobody ever did a study to say this is what a school needs or does not need. And when they were put together, they were put together on the assumption, as the planning department memo states, as if all of them will be used all at once, and as if there is nothing around your destination, including a T-stop or a school or where you live. My husband walked our kids up every day. It was a half mile. I walked them home every day from Ainger School. If I had a kid there, I would just be picking them up later. So I think this is a perfectly reasonable petition, and when the time comes, if there's no other comments, I will move to close the public hearing and approve.
Thank you, Councillor Downs. I think we're safe to close the public hearing with that motion, and then we'll continue to talk in committee. I don't see any more comments from the public. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Great, let's move on. Councillor Leary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate Councillor Downs' comments regarding the parking. It's really not a concern of mine in this instance, and I love the Union Church, and it's a great community resource, and I want to support the church in their endeavors and everything that they do. I was there recently to attend a housing summit, a discussion, which was very well attended. I actually did drive there, didn't have trouble parking. But it is near a T-stop, so it could be good to encourage some of the older kids maybe to if they can, utilize that. But I think this is a wonderful thing for the families, and I will absolutely support this. Thank you.
Any other comments from committee members? If not, yes, Councillor Farrell.
It's outside my area, but we visited there this afternoon and we're very impressed with the school. All of the students, young students, were out playing in the playground, and it looked like they're having a ball, and very safe and secure. It didn't appear that traffic was an issue, and I think it's great to support the school.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. I'll just say, having listened to all this, that I'd like to say bravo for providing a really important community need for childcare, particularly after-school care. There's not enough. It's hard. Most of the school-based programs are on wait lists. I love the sort of flexible arrangement you've developed around carpooling and staggering drop-off and pickup times. I think it blends really well with the need we're seeing increasingly for church buildings to rent out space in order to be self-sustaining and to use that space. We've had several other churches come before us asking for a similar waiver to allow for and nonprofit uses for exactly the same reason. We want these churches, these buildings, these congregations to stay in operation. At the same time, you're providing a really important need to the community, and bravo for that. I also didn't know, but I appreciated hearing from the parent about how it also provides sort of a Chinese cultural connection and the experience with Mandarin as a way for families to keep their children steeped in their own culture. So I really appreciate that part too. Councillor Downs, I think we would now like a motion on the project, on the proposal.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Let's take a vote. Oh, yeah, sorry, yes, let's review the council order. Thank you, see? Kat, is that you?
Yeah, sorry, one moment.
I got you off by forgetting about it.
So for findings, we have 1, the site is an appropriate location for the proposed nonprofit educational use and parking waiver of 3 stalls because the site has historically accommodated a mix of uses with the current parking configuration. The uses proposed mostly operate out of the site at different times, thus resulting in a lesser parking demand than the ordinance requires. 2, the use and parking waivers will not adversely affect the neighborhood because there is adequate parking on site and in the vicinity to accommodate the proposed use, and the nonprofit education use is complementary to the primary religious use of the site. 3, there will not be a nuisance to vehicles or pedestrians because the existing conditions of the site will be maintained and pickup and drop-off times will be staggered. 4, access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved. And 5, a waiver of 3 stalls is in the public interest because constructing additional parking stalls would require an increase in impervious paving on the site, and street parking and public transit options are available. And standard conditions would apply, so that's the plan referencing. standard building permit conditions and occupancy conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Kemet. Now we'll take a vote on it.
Counselor Block?
Aye.
Counselor Downs?
Aye.
Counselor Farrell?
Aye.
Counselor Kelly?
Aye.
Counselor Leary?
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Counselor Lucas?
Aye.
Motion passes.
You may proceed legally. And thank you again. The next item before us tonight is number 10-24, which is a request to allow 3 single-family attached dwellings in 2 buildings, to waive certain dimensional requirements, and 2 parking stalls at 199 Church Street. Ms. Kemet, I believe this one is you again?
It is, one moment. So this is petition 10-24, a special permit for 199 Church Street, requesting relief to allow 3 single-family attached dwellings in 2 buildings, and relief for dimensional requirements, and a waiver of 1 parking stall. Sorry, this is a little bit blurry. There was a previous hearing held on this item last month in January, so most of the details here remain the same. The petitioner proposes to convert the existing accessory apartment at the rear of the site, which is in a detached carriage house, into a separate dwelling and construct a new parking stall. This will result in 3 single-family attached dwellings in 2 different structures, so no new structures will be added. Any renovations for the spaces themselves will be interior to the building. So most of the relief here really applies to what already exists on the site. The relief needed here is to allow the proposed use, which is single-family attached dwellings. No changes proposed to either structure, but the relief for the existing buildings includes the front building, which has a non-conforming front setback and non-conforming side setbacks. A side setback of 8.6 feet where 25 feet is required. The rear building has a non-conforming side setback and rear setback. The setbacks that apply to detached accessory apartments are different from the setbacks that apply to single-family attached dwellings. So the side setback that is currently conforming of 11.7 feet also requires relief now. The 3 units are proposed on a 10,668 square foot lot. So the lot area per unit of 3,556 square feet, where 4,000 square feet is required, also requires relief. The lot coverage is proposed at 28.8%, where a maximum of 25% is allowed by right. So that needs relief. For parking, a waiver of 1 stall is needed because they are creating 1 new parking stall. And relief is needed to allow parking in the front and side setbacks, and to allow a driveway within 10 feet of the side lot line and within 20 feet of the side lot line. When reviewing this request, the council should consider if the site and structures as proposed are appropriate for the proposed 3 single-family attached dwellings, if the dwellings will adversely affect the neighborhood, if they will create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, if access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and number of vehicles involved, and if literal compliance with the required amount of parking is impracticable due to the nature of the use or the location, size, width, depth, shape, or grade of the lot. The petitioner is proposing to convert the accessory apartment in the rear building into separate single-family attached dwellings. The changes proposed are all internal within the envelope of each building. No new square footage will be added. The changes proposed here are limited to the construction of 1 parking stall. It was originally proposed within the front setback here, parallel to the front of the front building. After hearing feedback provided last month at that hearing, the petitioners proposed a revised plan here. So that stall would now be behind the 4 existing parking stalls on the site. So it would no longer be within the front setback, which would require that relief. With the changing location of the parking stall, planning is not concerned with the proposed change in use and believes that the relocated stall is an improvement on the original plan that had it in the front setback. We believe the change in use should be fairly minimal in terms of impact on the neighborhood because the changes are really internal and just the addition of that one stall. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kemet. Are there any members of the public, either on Zoom or in the chamber, who would like to speak to this project? Oh, yes. I would very much like to go to the petitioner before we go to the public. That's Glen Shane Properties.
Hi, it's Mark Sangiolo, architect. I'm speaking for the petitioner.
Hello, Mr. Sangio. Sorry.
Hi. One thing just to note is that really the use on this site hasn't changed in many years. When I first measured the building, there are actually 4 units in this array of buildings. It has a historic component to it, and we restored the carriage house in the rear. It's all quite picturesque and charming now. We're really not proposing any different type of use. It'll still be 3 families that are living there, and the sizes of the units are kind of nice because they are of a variety of sizes. The front unit is on 3 floors and it's 2,900 square feet. The unit attached to that behind it is 1,900, and the carriage house is 1,600. And so I think they will. This is a nice size range for the market. Even the small unit, the carriage house, I think will be a nice starter home for somebody. It'll be could probably come in at a lesser selling point because it's only a 2-bedroom small unit, et cetera. So we're really not talking about changing much. I think everyone was pretty positive about the project last time. It was just the parking in the front, and we worked really hard to try to get that to work in the dimensions that we had.
Thank you, Mr. Sangiolo. Now, I'd like to hear if any members of the public have comments or questions on this proposal. We did receive 1 or 2 in writing, by the way. I don't see anyone. So we'll take it into the committee. Councilor Lucas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for the petitioner. What is the length of the parking stalls for this project?
19 feet.
19 feet, exactly what the ordinance requires. So I was looking at the site plan, and the 2 parking stalls that are second closest to the street, it's the ones behind, the ones in the front. How are they going to enter the parking stall if there's a car parked first? Is there enough room to parallel park and to pull out and whatever?
Yeah. Well, the original special permit that was granted had tandem parking. And I think that I've kind of marked, it is a little bit undersized for maneuverability in terms of parallel parking. But I have marked it out on my property, and it is workable. You know, a lot of what's happening now, where car spaces are getting a little smaller, maneuvering spaces are getting a little bit smaller, and it kind of forces people into smaller cars. So if they had smaller cars on this site, they could definitely parallel park them.
Okay. Can I ask Ms. Kemet of Planning to put up the site plan from your presentation? I have a question for Mr. Sangiolo. Thank you. So if we look at the revised plan on the right, you see, I don't have the cursor. Do you see that diagonal horizontal bar that is bottom left of the yellow highlight parking stall? Yes, that thing. What is that?
It's just a walkway to get into the into Unit 2.
Oh, okay. It's not elevator or anything like that. It's just
no.
Oh.
Yeah, just walkway.
Okay. Okay, all right. I agree with you that smaller cars should be able to access those two parking stalls that I was referring to. I do worry about bigger cars. And forgive me, what is what is to the right of the yellow highlighted portion? Is that a walkway too?
That's right. That's a
And
walkway,
okay, and what is to the right of that?
grass area.
Grass area. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Answer my questions.
Thank you, Councilor Lucas. Councilor Farrell?
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Mr. Sangiolo, I compliment you on the change that you've made. This is a wonderful neighborhood of absolutely delightful homes, and to remove the parking space from the front, I think benefits you and the neighborhood, and I compliment you on that. I would like to ask if you have given any consideration, once again, to my interest here, about having the driveway be of permeable materials. If it says, if it's all asphalt, that's a really significant portion of asphalt. And I would include in that comment also the two walkways that were just referenced. Just curious to know if you've had any thoughts about that. Thank you.
Yeah, we'd be happy to make them permeable pavers, and we don't have a problem with that. Even though engineering doesn't give you any credit for that, but yeah, we'd be happy to do it in the permeable, or at least 80% of it.
Mr.
Thank you.
Sangiolo, are you saying for the walkways and the parking, or just for the walkways?
Both.
Great.
Okay, so maybe we'll add that into the council order. Is that it,
Yeah.
Councilor Farrell?
Thank you, Mr. Sangiolo.
If you could do, you're welcome. If you could do it as a percentage, not the whole thing, so we could have a little bit of flexibility. Maybe we'll do the middle aisle as asphalt, and then do all the parking and the walkways as permeable, something like that.
Would that be your suggestion, Mr. Sangiolo?
Yes, it would.
Say it one more time. So,
The maneuvering area would be asphalt, and all the parking spaces and walkways would be permeable.
interesting. I would have thought about it the other way around, but that's your recommendation. Councilor Farrell?
It could be, or you could say we're the negative either way. Just I don't want to tie the client into doing all this permeable paving, which can get quite expensive.
And bad for the environment. Councilor Farrell, follow up?
Madam Chair, if you would clarify, the large section as you enter the property, would that be asphalt or would that be permeable? Or are you suggesting that just the parking spaces themselves would be permeable?
Why don't we do with all the parking spaces, the 9x19s, there are 5 of them, we'll do those asphalt, and the remainder will all be permeable.
But that front entry section?
Permeable.
Permeable, and the walkways to unit 2
Yes.
and to the rear unit, all permeable.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense to me too. Let's try and include wording on that in the proposed council order. All set, Councilor Farrell?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Leary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Sangiolo, I do really appreciate the work that went into taking the feedback into consideration and changing around the lot a bit and putting the parking in a different spot. I think it works really well. And also your effort to decrease the impervious area also. I appreciate that. I think you do get credit for that in the stormwater.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask you, in the map that you have of the parking, does the yellow highlighted area, that's the 5th parking area? And does the other cars are parking to the side, and there's a driveway through the middle, and that car parks at the end of that middle driveway, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. And there's enough space between the other cars for them to get in and out without too much trouble?
Yes.
The only other thing I wanted to ask about was any separation between the walkways and the driveway. It looks like it's a bit of a tight site, but I always think it's good to have some separation, whether that's plantings or something, so that the cars don't park or impede any of the pedestrian areas.
Yeah, well, you know, the only thing I can say that it would have been, if the site was a little bit bigger, we could have had a little more liberty in what we were doing. But I think to maximize the green space, it was just easier to put the walkway right up against the parking. So,
Okay, well, it doesn't seem like the cars are going to be speeding in there.
no.
To be pretty careful.
Not a high traffic zone.
So this is my ward, so when appropriate, I would move approval.
Thank you, Councilor Leary. We will do
It
that.
just as a point of interest for some of you, maybe in my 35-year career as an architect, my first project was down the street on Oakland Street, and was influenced by this carriage house on this property. So I've kind of come full circle and got to do this project too.
Thank you for that story. It is a charming area. Mr. Sangiolo, too, before we vote on this, I'd just like to say I was so happy to see you move this parking spot out of the front setback. And as a site planner, and in a city where most building was done before we had zoning and most is out of conformity with current zoning, you did a very good job locating this parking in the only spot that really makes sense. And in a way, it really makes more sense. So, excuse me, I appreciate that very much. The only other thing I will say is that I'm hoping we don't see a trend of accessory dwelling units, ADUs, that get permission to become accessory dwelling units be converted into single residences. We're getting a few of them, and that was not the intention of the creation of the accessory apartment ordinance. I understand why it is advantageous to owners and developers to do that, but and this is not specific to your project. I'm just using this opportunity to say that I don't really like this direction. We wanted to keep accessory dwelling units in order to have housing units that were generally smaller, with the owner occupying one or part of the unit. So, you know, we're just starting to see more and more of these, and it's I hope a cautionary word to other people to not come in for approval for an accessory dwelling unit and then come back and try and get it to be sold as a separate residential unit. I don't love that, but I like what you've done here. I think you've definitely made lemonade out of a lemony site, and we do have a motion on the floor to approve, so let's take a look at, oh, Councilor Downs, sorry.
I was just going to suggest, and I endorse what you said, Chair Kelly, but I was going to suggest that Councilor Leary might want to first move to close the public hearing.
We did that.
Did you do that?
Didn't we do that? Oh, we didn't do that.
Oh, okay.
The public hearing had stayed open from our previous meeting. I thought we did.
We did.
I said no member of the public wants to speak. Let's close the public hearing. We voted on that. She's made a motion to approve it. We're going to take a look at the council order, unless I'm mistaken, Clerk. Oh, okay. Let's accept Councilor Leary's motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
All in favor, say aye.
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 I'm having deja vu. Maybe it was a different project. Okay, now we've at least closed it once, if not twice. Now let's take a look at the findings and conditions and proposed council order. Thank you. I see it up on the screen.
Yes, so for findings, we have one. The site is an appropriate location for 3 single-family attached dwellings in 2 separate buildings with reduced lot area per unit, reduced front setback, reduced side setback, reduced rear setback, with 1 parking stall waived, parking stalls within the front and side setbacks, and with a driveway within 10 feet of the side lot line, and parking within 20 feet of the side lot line because there is a diverse mix of residential buildings and configurations in the area. Much of the relief required reflects the built conditions today and is triggered by the conversion to a different building type. 2, the project as proposed will not adversely affect the neighborhood because the total number of units on the site will remain the same and no additional square footage will be added to the existing structures. 3, there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians because the existing curb cut and driveway location will be maintained. 4, access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and number of vehicles involved. And 5, literal compliance with the required amount of parking is not in the public interest because additional paving would result in an increase in the non-conforming lot coverage and add additional unnecessary paved area. For conditions, standard conditions would apply, so that's plan referencing, standard building permit, and occupancy conditions. And in this case, I don't think we necessarily need to add another condition. I think we would just be looking for a revised site plan showing that the parking stalls will be paved asphalt and the driveway, walkways, and maneuvering area would be permeable pavers.
Well done. Councillor Lucas?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Ms. Kemet, for the recommendation. Do we need to approve this subject to second call? Because we're gonna see a revised site plan.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, so there's 2 ways I think this could happen. I think you could approve it subject to second call. However, I think sometimes that places a pretty quick turnaround on the applicant when there tends to be a delay with surveyors to update site plans. Or we could write that condition in such a way that the revised site plan is required at the building permit phase, if you're comfortable with that.
I would rather we not hold it up. I think the wording seems quite clear. I would like us to be able to vote on this and not put it on second call. That's just my opinion. Do other people have other thoughts? That looks okay with everyone? Okay, I'm seeing thumbs up. Let's go ahead and vote.
Councillor Block?
Aye.
Councillor Downs?
Aye.
Councillor Farrell?
Aye.
Councillor Kelly?
Aye.
Councillor Leary?
Aye.
Councillor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Councillor Lucas?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Sangiello.
Thank you very much.
The next item is number 118-24. It's a request to further extend non-conforming FAR, to alter the non-conforming number of stories, and to alter the non-conforming front setback at 442-444 Lowell Ave.
Okay. So this is 444 Lowell Ave. There are 3 items of relief required here. It is to extend the non-conforming floor area ratio, which is already not in compliance, but will be further out of compliance with this proposal. The request to alter a non-conforming 3-story dwelling. It is a little bit confusing, and I'll get into it once we see the elevations on how many floors it is now and then how many floors it will be, because that tripped me up a little bit. And then request to alter and extend the non-conforming front setback. The criteria to consider are that the proposed additions increasing the non-conforming floor area ratio are not substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming use to the neighborhood, that the proposed increase in the non-conforming floor area ratio from 0.55 to 0.78, where 0.49 is the maximum allowed by right, is consistent with and not in derogation of the size, scale, and design of other structures in the neighborhood. That the proposed additions, which will extend the non-conforming 3.5-story structure, are not substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure is to the neighborhood. And the proposed additions, which will extend the non-conforming front setback, are not substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming use is to the neighborhood. If you can see on the map where City Hall is, if you go out to directly behind the speaker's lectern, and go to that four-way intersection, this is a little bit less than half a mile to the north on Lowell Ave, in between City Hall, Newton North High School. It's located in the MR1 zone, which allows it to be a two-family by right, with SR2 right behind it, and some MR2 sprinkled across the street. This is a look at the site plan as it exists now, which you can see the topography a little bit better than the other one. But two things that I want to point out here is that there is a right-of-way easement on the rear of the property that extends back there, and that's how they have to access it rather than from Lowell Ave. That extends up 3 properties and it comes around back. And then the other thing that I want to point out is just that it's a pretty significant draw, with it being a pretty steep terrain going from the property going up at the back of the lot, and then from the back of the property to the front of the property is also a pretty significant slope. So it's almost a little bit of a U-shaped lot, where it's creates some difficulties for the floor area ratio, the number of stories, because there are some significant grade changes overall to the site. There's 2 major sections for the work that they're doing. They're adding dormers onto the existing structure at the top, and then they're doing a 2-story rear addition as well. Look at the front. The front is going to have some window and entrance changes, but otherwise is going to keep that same design and style as it has already gone before the Newton Historical Commission. This is in keeping with the same style that it has already had. And then this is where I want to get into how many floors it is and will be, and a little bit of the grade, as you can see from the left elevation. So it is currently a 3.5-story structure, with that lower level or basement counting as a story, and then the 2 regular first, second story, and then that attic space counts as a half-story. So that's 3.5. With the addition to the rear, there's also going to be some leveling of the site. That means that this lower level now counts properly as a basement, where it does not count as a floor. So that does not count. This counts as the first floor, where you enter from the front at ground level. Then there's a proper second floor. And now with the dormers added on, now that it is a 3rd story. So we go from 3.5 to 3 stories, but there is no actual change above sea level to the actual roof line height, just some change to the grading overall. As well, from this depiction, you can see where that work in the rear is occurring, and then you can see some of the added deck space there and below. You can see this all as well, some of the same ideas here with the change of the grade for the site, and that addition to the rear as well, between the proposed and the existing. And then this is a look at the rear. They're also adding some garage space there as well, but that's a look at the deck space as well, and the rear addition. I will stop sharing and turn it over from here.
Thank you, Mr. Aidenisi. Would the petitioner like to add something to this?
Yes, Madam Chair. Lawrence Lee on behalf of the petitioner.
Welcome, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. So good evening. For the record, Lawrence Lee, Rosenberg, Freeman, and Lee. On behalf of the petitioner, and with your permission, Madam Chair, I would like to share my screen.
Please do.
Thank you. So I hope you can all see that.
Yes.
I'm add a little bit more context to the supplementing Joe's presentation, which is very detailed and covered a lot of information. So this is just an overall, we're at a 2-family MR1 zone. This is really just a simple rear addition. Everything that is with the house currently as it exists are all non-conforming, as Joe noted in the very beginning. So we got a non-conforming FAR, non-conforming as to the number of stories, and non-conforming front setback. So basically, anything you do to the property really would require a special permit. So there is a common driveway in the back. We did go through NHC on the design, so they've looked at the same plans you all are seeing now, and they've approved that. Some of the things that we've also incorporated into the project are universal design features in the floor plans. This is the site with the assessor's map, and you can see that the easements in the back where the common driveway goes. This also adds some context, so you can see the properties to the left and right of us in terms of the sizes of those buildings. So what we're looking to do is to add an addition to the back, and you'll see in some later photographs how this is in line with what our neighbors have done in the past as well. This is a Google image. You can see this is our property over here. You can see in the rear addition clearly delineated in the back of the property over here as well as over here. Same thing. This just gives you some context in terms of why we want to preserve the house. There's a nice row of brick homes here. We wanted to preserve that. I think NHC approved of that. The rear addition is you can't even see it if you're walking on the street. So I think our neighbors, we did get in touch with all of our folks near us, tell them about the project, and we have communicated with some direct abutters with some specific requests, which I believe we have all addressed. And these are some photographs of the streetscape, which I think is good to keep. We didn't want to tear down the house and build something that looked really out of place. This is the property to the right of us. So we're standing in the backyard here. So if you're standing on the street looking at it, this is 448 Lowell. You can see the rear addition to that property. On the other side of us, same thing. There's a large rear addition. So what we're looking to do, and this is our property over here. So this is the big common driveway. One of the things that actually is going to be a big improvement is that this is all asphalt. So believe it or not, our open space actually went up slightly simply because we're eliminating this and we're cleaning up our landscaping in the back. The site plans, I think this gives some context as well to the length of the addition, stops short of the additions to the houses directly next to us. You can see the edges of the building over here and over here. So it doesn't even go as far back as our neighbors. Landscape plan, these are all in your packet. This whole area is going to be cleaned up. This lawn area is shaped this way because of a discussion we had with a butter directly to the left of us, where my cursor is. One of the concerns is that currently there's a lack of space for snow. So this area is marked as snow storage in the future. So that's one of the accommodations we made. There are a row of arborvitaes that are there for screening purposes. I spoke with the council for the neighbors behind us earlier today, and that we will be mitigating some of the impacts for them with a fence and some trees in the back. So that's what we will be adding as well. And a universal design, again, these are features that we wanted to highlight. They were highlighted in a set of plans that were submitted. Open floor plans, wider doorways, curbless in terms of showers and things like that. So I think those are all great features for the project. And this is just a rendering of what it will look like at the end. So there's a computer image. The streetscape, as you can see, really matches everything. We're just really cleaning up the front, make it look like a true two-family home. Again, these are the same images that NHC had previously approved. Open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this project? I don't see any, so we will take it into the committee. Councillor Block.
Thank you, Chair Kelly.
You had your hand up first. Someone's fighting.
Sorry.
No.
I'm interested in the parking. I assume it's all in the rear, and if maybe Mr. Lee could just explain how the parking will work on this site.
Yes, I can do that. If I may share my screen again, Madam Chair.
Yes, please. It's a great
Thank you.
question. I think we'll all benefit from having a little closer look at this.
So hope you can see this. This is the ground floor, if you will. And so what we're doing is we're adding, we're modifying the ground floor to accommodate the 2 required parking spaces for each unit.
So that's directly behind the building, is that right?
That's correct. So there's already a garage. I believe this is on the left-hand side now. So we're modifying the back ground floor such that the driveway is in the back over here. It's the entrance of the driveway is actually several houses down the street. And so we cross over about 3 or 4 houses before we reach our house. And the cars would just simply pull in to the garages.
I think that design's terrific. I want to compliment you on the whole project. Looks very nice. Your neighbors to the immediate left and right have a different parking system, which I think this is preferable. So thanks very much for doing that.
Credit the design to Nick, who is on the call. So he did the hard work.
All set, Councillor Block? Can I follow up while we're on that? Mr. Lee, did you say that you're going to be cleaning up that rear sort of joined access driveway and will have less impervious surface than currently?
Yeah, the way the calculations work out, so when I say cleaning up, I meant in terms of the back landscape area. So based on that landscape plan we submitted, right now it's just bushes everywhere and there's a shed that has to go. There's a chain link fence in the back. So we will be putting up a privacy fence in the back, cleaning up the whole landscaped area. There'll be the folks will be able to enjoy it. And you see that there's a lot of asphalt in the back currently. So by increasing the building and then cleaning up that landscape area, we're actually getting 0.1 greater percent in terms of, or 1% greater in terms of the open space.
Okay, so you'd be removing some of the asphalt and turning it into landscaping.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lucas, it works out better anyway because I like the ward councillor to get the wrap up.
Thank you. The bad thing about not going first is that you and Councillor Bach stole my questions. But I do have one for Mr. Lee. Because it was mentioned in the memo, and you mentioned it tonight, is it a partial demo of the building or a full demo?
It's partial.
Okay.
Just the rear addition.
Oh, so okay, so the rear of the building is being demolished, and then you're gonna build on more to what's there now, right?
That's right. Yeah, so the way Historical Commission and the ordinance reads is that if you were to just impact more than 50% of a facade, they still consider it partial demolition. So because we are extending out the back, that's considered partial demo, and that's what we got permission for from the NHC.
Okay, all right. All right, I think that answers all my questions. I know it's, when I first looked at this petition, I noticed that the FAR was going to shoot up quite a bit, but I understand that the new build is in the rear of the building and it's consistent with the 2 abutting properties. And we didn't get any emails regarding this petition. So, Chair, when ready, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and move for approval. Thank you.
We will get to that soon. Councillor Leary, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. I just had a comment. I wanted to thank Mr. Lee for including universal design and being thoughtful about that. I think that's important, especially as we get older, and it benefits everybody, actually. So I certainly intend to vote approval on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leary. Councillor Albright. Happy to have you here. This is your ward also. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the fact that all the construction is to the rear is very advantageous for everybody. These are all rental properties. Will this continue to be a rental property, Mr. Lee?
I believe my clients are intending for them to be sold as condominiums.
Uh-huh. So it'll still remain a a two-family unit.
That is correct.
So they'll just be larger.
Correct.
Each
From
unit will
exist-
be,
from the existing conditions.
so each unit will grow by about 1,000 square feet, is that right?
That's yes. Let me just that's approximately, yes. Yep, that's about right.
So
Nick, if you want to chime in on those.
Yeah, I think we're,
apologize.
yeah, it's slightly more than 1,000, I think, the way it's set up right now.
And they're going to be switched to condominiums as opposed to rental?
That is correct.
Yeah, my only sorrow is that this is a very active rental neighborhood. And I don't know how affordable the rents are, but they're more affordable certainly than buying a condominium is going to be. And I'm sorry that it will be changing to be a much more expensive purchase price for the people that will end up living there, and it won't be as affordable anymore. And that has nothing to do with land use standards. That's my own standard. That's all. So I'm sorry for that. But there's nothing wrong. I mean, it certainly meets all our standards. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Albright. I agree with her concern of that. And again, that's nothing we have control over. That's a market-driven thing here. I think having rental units is a really important thing, especially in a way in locations like this. If there are no more comments from committee members, I'm just going to make a couple of wrap-up comments myself, but Councillor Lucas stole almost all my points. I think keeping the existing building versus tearing it down is the right thing to do for the environment and for the look of the neighborhood, keeping that brick and existing. I think the cleaning up of the rear and less asphalt is a positive. Universal design, absolutely. Great that you're including that. And I too, like Councillor Lucas, was concerned about the big jump in FAR. But when you see that it's all at the rear and all of this is basically unseen from the street front and is very compatible with the abutting uses and additions, it makes sense to me too. So I will also be voting in favor. At this time, I think we will take up the motion by Councillor Lucas and take a vote. Oh, no, we're not. We're going to look at a council order. Sorry? Close the public hearing first. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 No opposition. Now we'll take a look at a proposed council order.
The proposed findings are that the proposed additions that will further the non-conforming floor area ratio are not substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming use to the neighborhood, as the additional floor area is located to the rear and lower in height than the existing structure. That the proposed increase in the non-conforming floor area ratio from 0.55 to 0.78, where 0.49 is the maximum allowed by right, is consistent with and not in derogation of the size, scale, and design of other structures in the neighborhood, given the small and narrow lot size with the two-family dwelling is typical for this area along Lowell Ave. That the proposed additions, which will continue the non-conforming 3.5 story height, are not substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming use to the neighborhood, as the additions will be solely to the rear of the building, and that the proposed additions, which will vertically extend the non-conforming front setback, are not substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming use to the neighborhood, because the widening of the porch that extends the setback maintains the same setback and does not exacerbate the non-conformity. And we have standard conditions.
Thank you. I think we're ready to vote.
Counselor Block?
Aye.
Counselor Downs?
Aye.
Counselor Farrell?
Aye.
Counselor Kelly?
Aye.
Counselor Leary?
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Counselor Lucas?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Good luck with
Thank
the
you.
project. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
We must be approaching the projects that bring the people to the, who have been sitting in these uncomfortable bench seats all night, and I apologize for that. I always honor the patience and discomfort that members of the public have to sit through until their item comes up. The next one, hopefully maybe this is what you're here for, 117-24, request to further extend a non-conforming two-family dwelling and non-conforming front setback at 265-267 River Street.
So this is for additional height and dormers for non-conforming two-family in a single residence zone. I also want to briefly issue a correction from the memo. I did have the wrong ward listed. This is in Ward 4, not Ward 2.
Got it, Counselor Block? Your block.
And then for the zoning relief, it is single residence district, which means that two-family is not an allowed use. And by altering this, they need relief. And then the non-conforming front setback also needs relief as they are continuing that. The criteria to consider are that the proposed deck additions, which will extend the non-conforming front setback, are not substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure to the neighborhood.
Joe, can
That the
I ask you
proposed-
to share your screen? Are you?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, I thought I had it, and then I think I maybe as I went to pull up and confirm the
It's okay. We're on
correct
course
ward,
now.
it might have disappeared. This is the proposed relief, just verbatim, if anybody needs to read that for a second. And then the criteria to consider is that the non-conforming front setback is not substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure, and that the proposed alteration of the two-family use in the single residence zone is not substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming use to the neighborhood. This is a look at where the property is. It is to the northwest of West Newton along River Street. As you can see, it is in the SR3 zone. And while it's not the only two-family in the area, it is predominantly a single-family area, as it is within the single residence zone. And there's only a small patch of multi-residence zone in the area and a small patch of business use up the road a little bit. Look at the site plan. There's three major areas of change. There are currently, as it is set up, the first floor is exposed porch space on the front facing River Street and then in the side. And then the second floor is enclosed space there on that side and above that porch within the front along River Street. And then that is all going to become deck space for those two areas, as well as extending a little bit along that non-conforming front setback along William Street. Otherwise, all of the work is staying within the existing footprint other than that addition of deck and stair space parallel to William Street. The driveway and garage are notably staying the same as well as all the other open space within the property. A look at the elevations as you look at it from William Street, this front of it, you can see where that enclosed space is going to be not enclosed and where they're going to extend the height, all within the standards for the zone, and add some dormers also to the side, but they are not requiring relief for that. A look at the sides, although the bottom one, which is the left elevation, is also facing River Street or William Street, so that is also technically a front elevation, but they're adding that dormer, adding the deck space, and having relatively same look for that two-story side of it, just extending that height as well. Look from the rear, which I couldn't get as well of a picture from as either from Google Maps, but no change to the existing garage from the plans, and just extending that height, removing that enclosed space on that second story at the rear of the property, and you'll still be able to see those stairs and that other side addition. And I will turn it over now.
Thank you. Is the petitioner online who would like to say something about this proposal? Oh, right in front of us in person. Welcome.
Evening.
Might need to turn that.
Alex Virsky, architect for the petitioner. Actually, the petitioner. I think the planner has explained the project very clearly. I would like to add that as a part of the development, we're only adding one more bedroom to each unit. The units are typical two-bedroom units in a two-family house. However, the building is slightly smaller than usual. So the usual bedrooms that would be 11.5 by 12.5, in this case, are 10 by 11. So there is really no way to convert them into a sort of like a master bedroom or a parent's bedroom. In addition, the enclosed areas in front and the back don't really serve any purpose. They don't add any valuable space. And sometimes in the past, usually these were balconies or porches. So we're reversing them to a deck in the back and a porch in front. We are building an attic where two bedrooms would be located with dormers to incorporate bathrooms. The additional space is about 600 square feet, but because we're removing about 200 square feet from the enclosed porches, actually the addition of the space is quite small. So this would be very nice, not large units. I think they're about a little more than 1,500 square feet each.
Hmm. Three bedrooms, 1,500 square feet.
Right. Practical.
Anything else to add?
Oh, one important thing, and I think you all know that, but because the existing use is non-conforming, our constraints are front yards. We're taking from a most restrictive use where this is allowed, and it became, instead of 25, became 30. So while all other buildings are a little bit closer than ours to the street line, we're technically non-conforming, and technically our front yards are smaller than they have to be. But In fact, all other buildings are closer to the street than ours.
Alex, I didn't catch your last name quite.
It's Svirsky, S-V-I-R-S-K-Y.
Thank you. While you're standing there, maybe I missed it, but where do you anticipate the residents of these new units parking their cars?
There is an existing parking.
But could you explain what that is? Are they below-grade garages or at-grade garages or surface?
There is a one-car garage existing, but in front of the garage there is an ample parking for all the cars right as they exist right now, and we're just going to reuse it.
So you would say there's one designated parking spot per unit?
For each unit, yeah.
And room for...
And one probably in a garage.
Thank you. I know it's been a question that we've heard from some neighbors, concerns around parking in cars, and will they be parking on William Street? So I just wanted us to be clear on what you're planning here. Okay? Great, thank you. Any members of the public here to speak on this? Or on Zoom? No? Yes, sir? Yes. Come on up. You can take Alex's spot.
Hello, I appreciate the time tonight. I know it's getting late. Oh, here we go. Is that good?
That's perfect.
All right, hello. My name is Ed McLaughlin. I'm a resident of William Street. And while the design looks very nice, my concern is with parking. In the past, the existing unit prior to demolition was a two-family with 2 bedrooms per unit. And so increasing that to 6 bedrooms per unit, I think, I'm not 6 per unit, I'm sorry, 6 total, 3 per unit, creates a concern, especially with the likelihood of renters using it and 1 car per renter, leading us to maybe 6 cars associated with the property. In the past, the usage of that property led to cars being parked partway in the driveway. Perhaps the garage will be cleaned out, but in the past, cars were often parked across the sidewalk. Cars parked really close to the intersection with River Street, and those familiar with River Street, it's pretty fast road. Often people are driving above the speed limit there, and when you're trying to enter and exit from William Street, which is a narrow dead-end street, if there are a lot of cars right there at the mouth of the street, it creates a lot of difficulty and potential danger for the residents. And so I'm concerned about the parking that would be associated with the construction the way it is presented in the plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, come on up.
Hi, thank you. My name is Brooke Wells. I live at 9 William Street, which is the property immediately adjacent to this one on William Street. So I share my neighbor Ed's concerns about the parking, which he laid out nicely. In theory, there should be enough spots if we assume there's only 2 or 3 cars involved. But if we're talking about anything more than that, then I think we're looking at the best case scenario is that they jam into the driveway with the cars, the spare cars sort of half in the driveway and half off. Otherwise, they park on the street, and as the person who owns the house next door, I'll note that we have tandem parking, so we often ourselves have to pull our own car into the street and sort of do a switcheroo in order to get out in the morning. It can be incredibly difficult to do so when there's cars parked right in front of our house, across the street from our house, and so on. A few other issues that I want to lift up. There is a school bus stop for the F.A. Day Middle School directly across River Street from this property, so putting any cars on the street, either on William or on River, right out front, presents a potential hazard for the children who catch the bus there and get dropped off there. I'd estimate it between 30 and 40 kids every morning. And another concern that I have just for my property that is going to be less of a concern than for my neighbors is sightline mitigation. So as we raise the level of course, that creates more traffic and more occupancy at the levels that are looking directly into my children's bedrooms. I will note that there were trees and large shrubs there that have already been removed by the developer. And as a process note, we weren't contacted ahead of time. So today is the first day, or when we received the information about this hearing was the first time I knew who the developer was. We never received any contact information. There was no discussion about cutting down trees or shrubs that hung over into our property. Of course, I understand it's within the developer's right to do that without consulting us, although I've learned tonight that it's pretty common for neighbors to be consulted when there are changes to the property. Likewise, there have been a number of hazards at the site since the time that it was purchased and the demolition took place. And as we're in this holding pattern for this hearing today, including things like broken glass and nails on the sidewalk, the limited times that we have had snow and ice, it wasn't cleared from that rather extensive sidewalk, which again is a major thoroughfare for children going to the school bus. So I have a number of concerns about moving forward. I will end on a positive note. I was really pleased to see that there's the intention to maintain this as a two-family unit. It's been used as a two-family unit ever since my family and I moved in there 12 years ago. And as we know, we desperately need housing in the city of Newton, so I do fully support maintaining this as a two-family unit with some concerns that need to be addressed.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Anyone else? Yes? Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Brian Derrick. I also live on William Street, and I support what Ed and Brooke have brought up. I also just wanted to try to be brief and not redundant on what they said, but dispute the fact that there's been ample parking as a unit was prior to renovation and demolition. We have a third grader daughter, my wife Shannon's here as well, and we walk her to school almost every day. And you know, it's kind of been an activity what side of the street to walk on, because the cars have been sticking out on the sidewalk, and then we don't want to walk around those because it's right at the end of the street. It's on the corner lot. So we'll pick which side of the street to walk on and kind of make that an activity. We have noticed since the unit's been vacant, it's been a much nicer walk, just to give you some idea, because we don't have to worry about those cars if they're there or not, and that traffic concern, so we can be preoccupied with some other things. So adding more occupants to that unit, I make the assumption that that may lead to more cars in that area, and more people there, more visitors. There's another two-family unit directly opposite this unit on the other corner, which is great, but it's some more traffic right in that area as well. The street's, you know, medium to narrow, and mostly single-family houses, then up the street. So there's a lot of congestion bottleneck at the end of the road. And then I also just like to ask, I don't know what the protocol is, if the intention is for this to be continue to be rental units or condominiums that is to be sold, what the intention of this renovation project. I'm not sure who to ask that to.
I'm anticipating that was going to be a question, but now that you're asking it through me, we can ask the developer that question. Is this going to continue to be rental or for sale as ownership?
I am not a developer. I'm the petitioner for the developer. The present plan is to sell these units as condominiums. So if everything goes well and we will continue with the project, maybe in a year and a half, we're going to have new neighbors, most likely with kids, like you, having 1 or 2 cars. They're going to care about the parking. They're going to maintain the property versus the renters that used to care very little about the property. So even though I can't predict the future, but you're probably going to be very happy with
If you could possibly speak into the
Sorry.
microphone, people could hear, but thank you.
We think the
I
result
appreciate that
is
you were
gonna-
addressing them, but thank you.
Should I address you or? Okay.
Yeah, but the answer to the question is, I appreciate that you were trying to address the people who asked the question and the neighbors, but the answer to the question is you intend this to be sold as 2 ownership units.
Right.
That answers your question, correct, sir? Would you mind letting us know what number William Street you live at, for the record?
Yes, 36, sorry.
Thank you.
36 William Street. May I add one more thing?
Yes, absolutely.
It's the lot as it is now is pretty densely developed, over 55% structure. So if it does turn out to be a parking issue and seeking other remedies to add more parking to this lot doesn't seem like that's a feasible option really either. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. There are, just to address that question quickly, there are dimensional requirements and standards that do need to be met or asked for a waiver of in terms of how much lot coverage. I had been told earlier in the day by the planning department that they thought there was space on the site for 5 cars to park. I assume that that involves some stacking, but I can't answer that, and I don't know the future layout that they're anticipating doing here. Any other members of the public? Yes, come up, please.
Hi, I am Ivana Van Hengel-Bunatova from number 15, exactly next to Brook, number 9. My concern also about all the parking is that I don't necessarily truly believe a car would fit into the garage, because these days everyone has a big cars. It's a very, very tight garage. So I don't believe it would be used as a parking. And if families move in with children, we all welcome them, that's obvious. However, they don't have space to play outside, which means that they will move the cars in the road, and then there is no way to move through. So that was my comment, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for speaking. Before we take this into committee, I would just like to say to Alex, it makes sense that you identified yourself as not a developer, as just an owner, but we really encourage owners or petitioners, not just developers, but anyone who is instituting a change like this in a neighborhood to reach out to the neighbors. And we've heard tonight that that didn't happen here.
I apologize. I'm an architect. I'm not the owner. And I already told the owner that he made a big mistake.
It goes a long way to make early contact, to listen to that feedback and try and adapt it before coming before us. And it really helps pave the way for good neighborly relations. So I understand that you understand that as the architect. I'm glad you've passed it on. Water under the bridge, but let's see if we can move on. Stephanie Whalen. Are you a member of the public who would like to speak on this?
Yes, we are.
Could you just tell us your names and address?
Hi, Sherman Wallen, Stephanie Wallen, 56 William Street. There we are. You can see and hear us okay?
Yes, thank you. We can.
Okay. In addition to the other comments that have been made, there is a major issue that hasn't been brought up yet. The cars don't fit in the driveway. We've established that. And what happens is, across the street is also a large structure that has rental units in it. And what happens at that end of the street is they park in the street, and the house that's in question, they park in the street, and it does not comply with the 10-foot leeway for traffic. And the realistic, if there was an emergency at the end of the street a fire truck simply couldn't get through, and it's not a fire truck, okay, simply stated, a fire truck couldn't get through, and it's not the kind of thing where the fire truck could plow through and open it. There were two other did happen examples. The first example is there was an emergency situation at the end of the high end of the street, and resident from the street had to be taken by ambulance in an emergency situation, and the ambulance had to negotiate with almost zero clearance. And the ambulance driver did explain after the fact that he was ready to take out side view mirrors and plow through. There was no there was less than 10 feet clearance at the end of the street, non-complying with regulations. The other thing that's a fairly regular occurrence, at least for our end of the street, is delivery trucks show up, they can't get onto the street. And so we get packages late, 2 to 3, and then there's markings on the packages that say, could not deliver, street was blocked. And then the third, the other issue to allude to, it has been alluded to, is when cars are parked at the end of River Street, it creates a blind spot. And River Street is a major thoroughfare, and cars move relatively quickly and unfortunately don't slow down to turn onto River Street, and it creates a dangerous situation for cars and children that are on the street. I think that covers what I have to add to this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. We're definitely hearing a pattern of concerns from particularly William Street people. I don't see anyone else right now from the public who wants to speak, so we're going to take this into committee. Councillor Lucas?
I go first this time.
It's not your ward. And you had your hand up first.
Yes, but I love Ward 4, not just the restaurant. So the project, the renovations of the home, the renovations of the home are fine. I don't have any issue with it. But it was interesting to hear many residents and neighbors speak tonight about the parking situation and how it's a hazard. And, I think, some of their concerns are legit. Other things could be solved in traffic council, and other things could be solved if all of the cars park in the garage and in the parking lot. Because when I was looking at it, it looks like there should be ample space for maybe 3 cars to park in the driveway and 1 car to go into the garage. So I don't quite frankly, I don't see how it's an issue, but I don't understand fully the parking situation here, but I want to thank the residents who brought that up. I want to echo what you said earlier about how we encourage property owners and developers and all that to talk with the neighbors before the public hearing, to find out what their concerns are with the project, and then potentially the developer or homeowner can make changes to the plans. That did not happen here. So I'm disappointed in that, and I understand it's not your fault, sir, who's here in the chamber. Ultimately, I'm going to recommend, and it's going to be the will of the committee, but I'm going to recommend that we hold this and give the developer team time to talk with the neighbors about the parking situation. And I will leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Turn that off so you didn't have to hear me cough. Thank you, Councillor Lucas. We're going to go to Councillor Farrell and then Councillor Block, who I suspect might make the same proposal that you were just mentioning and that I was going to. Is your hand up also? Okay, so we're going to go Farrell, Block, Leary.
Let me apologize to Councilor Block, because I thought you had your hand up.
He did.
Early on, before I put
My
hand
choice.
up. Thank you, Chair. And sometimes it's hard to let Councilor Lucas go first because he knows all the issues. But we visited the site today, and I think if the garage is not used, I don't think it's possible to have 4 cars in that garage, in that space. 19 feet, the space that's required for a car?
Length.
Whatever, it's certainly, there is not 38 feet from the edge of the garage out to the street. It's just impossible unless you have one car in that garage. The garage is, as one neighbor pointed out, very small, and it's easy to believe that it wouldn't be used. I don't know whether we can propose things, but if that garage is not used as a garage but was as a shed, maybe it could be removed and pushed back in a real shed built for whatever shed wants, which I think would allow for 4 cars to be there. But I can't imagine 5 or 6 cars. I don't know where planning sees the 5th car, except on the very small side yard that exists. And if there are going to be families with kids, there isn't much space to play except in that tiny space. The other piece is, once again, I hope I don't get a nickname about this, but that's a lot of asphalt space back there. And again, if they're going to have a large parking space, I would love to see it converted to some sort of permeable surface. But I think as it currently exists, 4 cars without using the garage are not fitting. And that's my comment at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Farrell.
I just would say, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, I do think the building itself and the plans for the building are great. I have no objection. The plans for the building are terrific. I don't have a problem with that.
Aside from the size of the garage.
Yeah, right.
Councilor Block.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. I'm looking at the site plan, and I believe it's 29 feet, 3 inches from the garage to the sidewalk. Yeah. And two cars will not fit in that space without spilling over and blocking the sidewalk. So I think that's a legitimate concern that everybody has. And Councilor Farrell's observation that maybe the garage isn't that needed. I doubt it will be used to actually garage a car. So that's something for the developer and the architect to consider. I think the issue about the safety of William Street is properly more the province of Traffic Council. I'm very sympathetic to emergency vehicles not being able to get through, and for parents and children to have to navigate which side to walk on. William Street is a narrow street, and this is right where the intersection of River Street occurs. So coming around that corner, anybody on River Street turning onto Williams, if there are cars parked right near that intersection, they don't have much space to react to them. And if there are cars parked on both sides of the street, which I think is often the case, that's a real safety problem. So we need to think about that, even though that's really a separate issue from the proposed plan. That's an issue that has existed for some time, and I think maybe we can try and take this opportunity to improve on that. So those are my comments, and I will move to close the public hearing and to hold at the appropriate time.
Perfect. We will be getting back to those. Councilor Leary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no problem with the changes to the property. I'm thinking, yeah, losing more affordable units for condos. That's already been mentioned. However, that's not our purview, but I am anticipating that perhaps young families would move in there. It is close to the Burr School, and the River Street Playground is down there. And of course, young kids don't drive, whereas I think renters, maybe there's more adults that are all driving. I think Councilor Lucas already mentioned that some of the concerns regarding William Street are not really the purview of this committee. However, we do have traffic council, and living in Nonantum, this is a wide street compared to some of the streets we have. And you could consider having parking only on one side of the street, if that's really a concern. Put 5 feet, no parking within 5 feet of driveways or an intersection. Absolutely call the police, the administrative line, and ticket cars that stick out onto, that park illegally or hang out onto the sidewalk. That's what, the police will come and ticket them, and then that will discourage them from doing that again. The other thing I would just say is there's a lot of concern about car space, but I'm of the ilk that if you allow a lot of parking, you're going to get more people with cars or bigger cars. This might actually encourage people to limit cars or drive smaller cars. I also noticed there's a bus stop right outside the house on both sides with 3 bus lines, and so it is somewhat walkable, and there is transit there as well. So I would keep that in mind. But I share the concerns about the developer not speaking with the neighbors. I think it's really important to talk to you about what's going on, and I would encourage them to go back and do that, and we'll hold the item, and then they can come back in due time. So thank you.
Councilor Lucas.
2 things. One, Councilor Leary said something that I forgot to say. About calling the police or putting in a zoning enforcement request if cars park over onto the sidewalk. The other thing I'm going to recommend to Councilor Block is if you're going to move to hold, that you do not close the public hearing. That's all.
We already had that in mind. We're not going to close the public
All right,
hearing.
okay. That's it.
If we're going to hold it. Councilor Block.
Yes, thanks for that suggestion, Councilor Lucas. I just want to recognize this street as a community. It's a dead-end street. I happen to know a few people personally who live on this street just by chance. Everybody knows everybody else, and I think they're looking forward to neighbors. And if this development can be modified somewhat so that it's safer for everyone, I think that'll go over really well with everybody. So I just wanted to say that about this little community.
Thank you. Just to highlight some bullets of this conversation, I would urge the architect to go back and talk to the owner who's not a developer. Yes, you. To go back and talk to the owner. You can come to the microphone if you'd like to. It doesn't need to be a back and forth. I'm just giving you my bullet point finals before we vote on Councilor Black's motion. I think it would be very helpful to have a meeting with the owner and you representing him and the neighbors and try and see if, as somebody mentioned, there can be some reconfiguring. I would like to see a plan for where. Would you think about removing the garage or expanding the garage or putting on a shed and taking out the garage? And parking spaces need to be dimensioned so that we can see if they're actually adequately sized for vehicles. So things like that, talk to the neighbors, hear them out, get to know each other, use this time while it's being held to look into traffic. The neighbors can look into traffic council and zoning enforcement requests in terms of parking. Take some time to bring this to a better place than it is tonight. I like the idea, too, that was mentioned about specifying permeable surfaces on some of the parking. And again, to think about neighbors, parking, traffic council, whether to use the garage. Did you need to say something, or did you just come up to be polite to me?
No. No, what I would like to say is we would like to propose to remove the garage and clearly show proposed 4 parking spaces. We already are inserting a dry well to accommodate extra pavement. So we will make sure that either if the council wishes that we'll, let's say, use the 2 of the parking spaces in permeable pavers in the back. I think it's reasonable for the board, for the council, to expect that a unit will have 2 parking spaces, and that at the same time we apologize for not contacting the neighbors, taking a hit for the people who owned the property before us and maintain it in whatever order unfamiliar to us is not very fair. Because we have totally different plans, and we do not anticipate cars or multiple renters, but I can understand how a property like this, which was not very well maintained, I know that because I saw it half a year ago, where, you know, renters would have their friends come in and there could be 6 cars parked there. Mm-hmm. That's not going to happen with the family who just paid, you know, $700,000 or $800,000 for a unit. They're simply not going to have enough money for 2 cars.
Well, I think speaking for the committee, we appreciate your willingness to think about reconfiguring this, about using permeable surfaces, and to take this time, while it will probably be held, to work on, we will need to see a new plan, because it won't be the same plan that was presented. There will not be a garage. There will be laid out parking.
Correct.
Hopefully you'll be able to meet with some of the neighbors and to establish a good relationship and to solve this in a way that is happier than tonight.
Would you prescribe the avenue of this workaround, or should we just simply contact the zoning or the planning and then distribute the plan to the neighbors, get their information somehow so we don't have to chase them?
Did you go to a design review team meeting, a DRT meeting? So you have a contact?
Go back to them.
Excuse me?
Go back to them?
You could go back to them and they can help you coordinate. We probably have the contact information for these neighbors. You know who they are. You can knock on their doors or leaflet them, send them an email, see if they'd like to have a neighborhood meeting. Whether it's you or a civil engineer who does a new layout for the driveway and parking, you'll come back to us in 2 or 4 weeks or however long this takes. But thank you. And it's hard to come for the first time to a land use committee meeting in Newton where we're not known for being easy. Thank you.
Madam Chair, he can reach out to Joe Iadonisi on this call, and
Perfect.
Joe will work with him to bring it back when it's ready.
Great.
Certainly.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Weaver. The clerk will send you in a butter list, sir. Will do. All right, let's take up Councilor Block's. We're going to keep the public hearing open, and we're going to vote on a motion to hold this project.
Councilor Block?
Aye.
Councilor Downs?
Aye.
Councilor Farrell?
Aye.
Councilor Kelly?
Aye.
Councilor Leary?
Aye.
Councilor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Councilor Lucas?
Aye.
Motion passes.
We'll see you again, and thank you, neighbors, for coming out on very short notice and for being very helpful and civil in your comments. Our final docket item for the night, 116-24, a request to amend a special permit, former special permit number 67-20, to allow a medical marijuana treatment center at 1089 Washington Street. As we know it, it's Ascend. Let's hear from planning.
Hello again, this is Kat Kemet from the Planning Department. This is petition number 11624 at 1089 Washington Street. Ascend, a retail marijuana establishment, was granted a special permit in 2020, which allowed for retail marijuana sales, and the facility opened in December of 2021. In 2023, the petitioner applied for a amendment to their special permit to allow a marijuana treatment center or the sale of medical marijuana to be co-located in the same building. Based on feedback and some of the topics raised at that time at the hearing, in October of 2023, the Land Use Committee voted to hold the item and the petitioner eventually withdrew. They're now returning with what is essentially the same petition from last fall. If approved, this would amend special permit 67-20 and allow a medical marijuana treatment center in the existing building. In reviewing this request, the council should consider whether the site is an appropriate location for the medical marijuana treatment center. If the proposed medical marijuana treatment center as developed will adversely affect the neighborhood, if there will be a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, and if access to the site is appropriate for the types and number of vehicles involved. Because this is a facility that sells marijuana, there are a few additional findings the committee should make. That is the following. The lot is designed such that it provides convenient, safe, and secure access and egress for clients and employees arriving to and leaving from the site, whether they are driving, bicycling, walking, or using public transportation. Loading, refuse, and service areas are designed to be secure and shielded from abutters. The marijuana retailer is designed to minimize adverse impacts on abutters. The retailer is not located within a 500-foot radius of a public or private K-12 school. And traffic generated by client trips, employee trips, and deliveries to and from the site will not create a significant adverse impact on nearby uses. A couple more. The building and site have been designed to be compatible with other buildings in the area and to mitigate any negative aesthetic impacts that might result from required security measures and restrictions on visibility into the interior of the building. The building and site are accessible to people with disabilities. The lot is accessible to regional roadways and public transportation. The lot is located where it may be monitored by law enforcement and other code enforcement personnel, and the hours of operation will have no significant adverse impact on nearby uses. The site consists of a 25,112 square foot lot improved with a one-story commercial building that was constructed in 1950. The main entrance is accessed via a curb cut on Washington Street. The site is fairly flat and is improved with landscaping and fencing surrounding the surface parking area abutting Cross Street. No physical, exterior, or major operational changes are proposed here. The hours of operation will remain the same, as will the amount of parking on the site and the number of employees. The original special permit included site improvements, including a crosswalk, perimeter fencing, landscaping, a bike shelter, and rain garden. Those elements have largely been constructed on the site, with the exception of a number of plantings that have died. So should this petition be approved, we'll be looking for compliance with that aspect of the special permit when it comes to the building permit and CO stage. In response to concerns raised back in October at that public hearing, the petitioner has revised several of the rules in their internal standard operating procedures to address some of the concerns that the neighborhood brought up, and has taken steps to communicate with neighbors about some of those concerns. Those changes include rules that employees will be required to pick up and dispose of trash before, after, and during business hours, and any customer caught littering after an initial verbal warning will be refused service moving forward. Overall, staff is not concerned with the proposed new use here. The addition of the medical use is unlikely to add additional negative impacts to the neighborhood, and any physical changes will be limited to the interior of the space. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kemet. Would the petitioner like to speak to this?
Yeah, hello, Madam Chair. My name is Mike Ross. I'm the attorney for this petition, and I'm joined tonight by Matt McKenna, who is the Director of Government Relations. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to just add a few comments, and I have some visual aids as well, if I could pull that up.
You can share your screen, Mr. Ross.
Okay, thank you. So good evening to you and to the members of the Land Use Committee, the counselors. We were here in October, as Kat mentioned, and apropos of some of the comments you were just saying, Madam Chair, about outreach and about the value and the importance of that. That's really what we've been up to since October. And when I say we, it's really been Matt McKenna, who's been doing the blocking and tackling of just reaching out to people and having those conversations. I just would be remiss if I didn't also thank you directly as someone who's been involved in those day-to-day conversations as well, or emails. And we appreciate your effort and the efforts of the other counselors from the ward. As I don't need to really get into this here, I want to just really kind of high level this. There is an actual need, a legitimate need for medical cannabis in Massachusetts. That's because the only operators that can sell medical cannabis are those that grow medical cannabis. It's vertically integrated. So all the other retail stores that may want to today cannot. So Ascend is in a unique place as one of the, I'm not going to say few, but one of the minority of operators who grows their own cannabis here in Massachusetts. They grow their cannabis in Athol, Massachusetts. They are in a position to do so. And for that reason, there's only one other operator, Garden Remedies, who is selling medical in Newton, and the others do not. And there are patients we know throughout Massachusetts who do rely on the medical regime. And so there is a need for those patients to have access to the medical regime. That's just an example of some of the how we've spent our time since October, as the 24th, our Land Use Committee hearing, conversations with yourself, Madam Chair, and other residents of the immediate community. Residents, by the way, who have been very proactive and communicative and generous with their time, and we appreciate that. And there's been good back and forth. And then, as Kat mentioned, there's been new SOPs, standard operating procedures that have been implemented as a result of those conversations. There's been some positive comments that we've heard, and no one's taking a victory lap here. We always will have work to do to achieve the goal of what we're trying to achieve, being a great corporate neighbor, but and just being a great neighbor in general. But we've definitely made some progress. And there's been a lot of back and forth between the community and my client, Ascend. The landscape improvements are contracted, and we're just waiting for, I'm going to say waiting for thaws. I read something, it was 70 degrees in Chicago today. We live in strange times here climate-wise, but it is still February. And so at spring, many of the plants that have died they've been removed, but will be replaced with vibrant species that live up to the commitment of what was made in the original 2020 special permit. And we will continue to comply with that with our landscape plan. This is our site plan that indicates all the species and requirements and commitments we've made, and that hasn't changed. And we will continue to live up to that commitment there. The litter and the waste piece is actually, it's pretty unique. I don't know of anyone else who has this in Massachusetts or any of my clients, and I work with many of the operators. It's a 2-strike rule. The first time that anyone's found littering, they're told that if they find their litter again, they will not be allowed back in the store. And I can just tell you from, as the attorney for the applicant, someone who sees under the hood, if you will, there have been people who have been barred from the store already from this procedure that's been put into place. And it's only recently been put into place. I think I said November 15th. So since November 15th, there's already been a handful of people who've already been told they are not welcome back. And in fact, if they come in, they will not be allowed to proceed to purchase anything in the store. And I think that's the way it should work. And this is, but again, I think it's fairly unique, and it's something that's in place right now. And so those SOPs have been. This is the page of the SOPs. We just took a screenshot of it. It's in our manuals and our procedures. We also added internal to the facility a trash barrel, which is kind of a no-brainer, and that will help also reduce the trash and the propensity of someone to just throw the trash on the ground, which is horrible behavior. But at least here there's a trash barrel, and so that might help those folks do the right thing. We have instructed both delivery drivers and employees that under no circumstances are they allowed to park on neighboring streets. There were some reports that we received of bad behavior on those side streets. Those individuals were fired, but that's a policy needs to be put in place so that everyone knows. And so it's something we're going to continue to work on, but they can park on Washington Street, they can park in our parking lot, and that's it. And anything else is a violation and is below acceptable for the company. And we're told that that's helping, and we're going to continue to work on it. We've also reached out to our abutting business owners on this street, and we've asked for tape and video to try to identify incursions and trespasses and bad behavior of anyone who would have come from our facility, and in order to, figure out who those folks are and see if we can try to identify them using our security. So there's been a consistent conversation. Matt kind of had those conversations, and we will continue to be vigilant on that issue. As mentioned, there is no physical change to the property to sell medical. It's not going to cause any physical changes to the facility. The only thing we will be changing is we create a point of sale that's already existing. We convert that one point of sale as a direct point of sale just for medical. That provides a direct line for anyone who would be a medical patient to go directly to that point of sale. And if anyone had questions, there's a medical consulting area, 2 seats where people can sit with our staff and ask questions about what might be the right product for them. We have a great team. They're very hands-on, and I know we took a picture of them to show you. I wanted to close just with, again, I forwarded an email from our Director of Government Relations, Matt McKenna, that was sent by one of the residents, Tim Techler. Sorry, I know he's here today, so he'll probably speak for himself. He lives on Cross Street. But talking about kind of the progress we're making. We're not perfect. Again, it's not a victory lap, but that we're having these conversations, and that he feels like he can communicate to Mr. McKenna. I mean, that's great to see that after the comments that came out after the October meeting. And I'll just point out to the committee that there were things that were done in the wisdom of this committee back in 2020 that are paying dividends today. For example, even though we do have a lot of green space on this site, even though we did employ a rain garden, we still exceeded the amount of parking spaces that are required. We are required to have 22 parking spaces on this site, but we actually have 25 parking spaces. And if the committee recalls, we shut down a curb cut that was on Cross Street that encouraged cars to go directly from the facility that was there previously onto Cross Street. That's no longer an option. The traffic goes directly from Washington Street and back to Washington Street. And so these efforts were all done deliberately when we were first opened from the guidance of the committee. And I do think they're paying dividends now. Combined with some of the operational changes that we're making, we think that generally speaking, we're in a better place today than we were when we first appeared in front of the committee. We respectfully request your support of today's request. I'll pause there and see if there are any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Did Mr. McKenna want to speak at this time too?
Matt, if you have anything to add, please feel free to.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Mike, and hello to all of you, and hopefully some of the neighbors are here that I've communicated with. I mostly want to be here as a as a resource, or if there are any more concerns or questions that come up. I'm happy to answer anything that either the public or the council has, and hopefully just we can keep this moving forward in a positive way.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see if there are any members of the public who have any comments.
This is Joe Lee. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Lee, go ahead.
Hi, how are you? I'm good. Okay. Yeah, I have a property in 53 Cross Street, just across the narrow cross street from Ascend. Generally speaking, after your opening in 2021, seems it's okay to me. However, I do have some concern about the littering. We do have, take pictures at least a couple of times, me and my wife, when we saw those litterings. But my question is this, I know you guys have a 2-strike policy, but my question is that how can you enforce those? Are you guys depending on the neighborhood to do this reporting, or you guys have any monitoring or camera or something can enforce those? Because I feel kind of tired to, every time to cut those and reporting. In fact, I have not talked with any of you yet as a neighbor, but I know you talk with Tim. That's great, but I do prefer you guys can listen to us, because we do a right cross street as you guys. So anything, impact, well, we will feel first, I think. But I do appreciate it. You can do something. As a previous question before you open, I have a concern about this, about, how to enforce those and who are going to depending on us. We have to do this report, and until the hearing, we can do this. So looks like I don't want suffering this anymore, but I hope you guys can do a better job to monitoring and to enforce those. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Ross or Mr. McKenna, do you want to directly address efforts?
I can answer that. So Joe, one of the ways that we do this, and this was explained in one of those chain emails with that group of neighbors, and I apologize if you're not within that group, I'd be happy to forward it to you, is we have an internal tracking system by the name of Dutchie, and Dutchie tracks every person that comes in, their purchase history. So if, for example, we find, and all of the receipts will have someone's contact information when they're given to them. So if we find those receipts throughout the property, those people are then logged into the system, and a strike goes on their record, and that's when they get the verbal warning. If that happens a second time, that's when they're banned. If those receipts or something like that comes into a neighbor's property and they report that to us, we will also log that in the Dutchie system. We will also use our security cameras. So say someone discards trash, but there's no receipt attached with the specific name, email number, etc. We can go and track via our security cameras and track it back to the point of sale, look at the timestamp on that, and then check the Dutchie system against that time of purchase to identify that person and log the infraction in their record.
Thank you, Mr. McKenna. Mr. Lee.
Madam Chair, I just wanted, there are, I think, twice a day sweeps of the facility to look for trash on our own. Is that right, Matt?
Correct.
Great. Also, I just wanted to point out that one of the big changes is that you have stopped using the plastic bags that were blowing everywhere. And now you have, apparently, bags are optional, and they're paper bags, they're not the plastic bags. And I believe you are considering having an optional email receipt versus a printout, which might help stop all of those little crunched up receipts that get thrown on the ground. Is that true?
That is correct. Yes, we're running that through compliance. Obviously, as a cannabis company, we're held to very strict compliance regulations, and infractions upon those are very serious towards our license. So it kind of takes us a little bit longer to vet kind of just general business ideas than as opposed to a regular business. But we are looking into that and hoping to get confirmation that it's something that we are able to do.
So those are some efforts towards the litter trash complaints.
Yeah. Let me get it more clear, Matt. So, other than the receipt we find out outside your property, on my properties, they can report to you. If I do not find a receipt, right? I know it's like before I have a bags or something clearly from a scent. Is that a clue or something you can control or find out some people throw this out or littering? Or how can you tracking that without receipt?
Without the receipt, it would obviously be hard. If it's something that is within the security camera coverage, if we can see someone drop it or something like that, then we can obviously trace it back to the point of sale. But I mean, we only have so many resources and so much camera coverage. If someone is a half a mile down the road and drops it and it blows somewhere, we have no way to.
Yeah, may I make a minor suggestions? I know you guys said every day you check before you close. Is there anyone can look around outside your property or maybe on the street? If you find something from a sand, you can pick it up, or we have to, report to you guys. If something outside on the cross street.
Yeah, we can look into something like that. I think that one of the ideas that was proposed in the group was maybe like a neighborhood cleanup, like community engagement type thing. I think that maybe there were some current concerns about sending employees onto private property. But as long as we could work something out with the group, that would be something that we'd be open to exploring.
Thank you, Mr. McKenna. Mr. Lee, are you all set for now?
Yes. One more thing is that the landscape, I saw, there's the water pond there. I don't know what the purpose of that is. Nothing beautiful to me, but but that's the planning to do it. I don't know if it can eliminate those water pond or not, because that's mosquito prone, and I don't know something else you can do. But that's the last comment I can make.
That was more of an intended as an environmental benefit to the site. It's something that's replacing groundwater back into the earth, something I'm sure you've been reading about. And it was something that the more environmentally minded team at Newton has available to try to encourage operators to bring more water into the ground. So we agreed to do that, something that was encouraged for us. So it is a benefit, notwithstanding the fact that we might draw mosquitoes if there's a pound of water. I mean, that's an issue too, but it's intended to create a little bit of a recharge of nature, and that's why that's there. It is intended to be a benefit for the surrounding area, as opposed to just a big black pile of asphalt, that doesn't let any water back into the ground. I mean, that's how they used to do things, and now people are doing things a little bit differently now with that type of stuff.
Just to augment what Mr. Ross is saying, Mr. Lee, as you recall, this site was wall to wall, property line to property line, pavement and building before this owner came in. And it was all impervious surface, and they had a big stormwater runoff and drainage problem. So not only is it to recharge the water system, but it is to manage all of the stormwater runoff and contain it on the site. So I'm sorry that you don't find their rain garden attractive. I hadn't heard about a mosquito problem yet, but I think it is a very important stormwater management program system. as well as an aesthetic to help break up what was just a sea of asphalt before. And they will be replacing the dead plants in the spring. And hopefully it will look nicer from your view across the street. Anybody else have anything to say? We did receive some letters from the public, and we Ward 3 councilors have heard from people on Cross and Riswall. Litter and parking have been the two biggest issues. I think that the Ascend people have addressed the litter thing very well tonight, and as Mr. Ross pointed out, through Mr. McKenna particularly, they have been very responsive to the neighbors and trying to be in compliance with previous conditions and ward off future infractions. Parking is another matter. You know, the streets are for public for people. If there are issues with people parking for extended periods of time in the wrong direction, blocking driveways, there are other ways of handling that rather than have the Ascend staff, which is not their responsibility, to manage that. One can report the cars to parking, one can request a zoning review application if people are parking on sidewalks or things like that. I don't think the parking problem, and it's also hard to designate, are these Ascend staff members or customers, or are they Trader Joe's, or are they just people in the neighborhood? It's a really tough thing that I think is beyond the scope of this project, this proposal, this special permit application to address, but happy to talk with the neighbors about other ways they don't want to be the parking police, understandably, but there are ways of trying to accommodate this. Let's take this into committee and hear from other people. I just spoke first on this because it's in my ward and I have been kept up to date frequently by the neighbors on it, and in touch with Ascend, who is really doing a very responsive job of dealing with it. Members of the committee, Mr. Farrell, Councilor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. We visited the site today, and as we were standing there, and a gentleman came out and identified himself, I think as the deputy manager. I'm not sure about that. Very nice. And we explained what we were doing, and he was pleasant and talked with us. I did mention, however, that there is trash in the landscaped part, so I'm not certain whether your employees really are going out in the morning, during the day, and after work. I mentioned that briefly to the gentleman that we were speaking with, and he said, well, it's very wet in there. So I looked again, and it's terrific that there is this water mitigation system, but there is, in fact, after several days of no rain, a significant amount of brackish water in the bottom of it. And I don't know if that means it simply isn't draining properly, but I think the effort to establish that is terrific. I don't know if there's a way you can test the permeability of that land, which would be great. And I would agree with the gentleman saying I would be concerned about that if the water is standing for a long period of time in the summer. But there wasn't a lot of trash. I mean, I think there were 3 or 4 plastic bottles, a tin can, a few pieces of paper, but things that, you know, if you have staff to go out and pick it up, just go pick it up. I wouldn't worry about cameras and everything. It's not so much that it's big piles of trash. It's just, who knows how it got there, but it's certainly easy to pick up. I just call those issues to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Farrell. I do see a member of the public, Jacqueline Schrader.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I think that all of the points that have been brought up this evening have definitely swung in the right direction. However, I feel that with the business, that the parking, the demand and the parking are not equal. And I feel that, I guess my questions at this point are, what happens if this permit is passed and this actually starts to degrade? Where are we as the public do we have the opportunity to bring back and have the permit rescinded? I guess my question is if this takes a wrong turn, what do we have as these neighbors? I said that. You know, what do we have to as a recourse, I guess is my question. I hear all these things. I was under the impression that when this was closed in October, that they were asked to hold off for 6 months to really give us an opportunity to see a real improvement, and not just this initial. I feel like this is an initial, and feel like there should still be some more work done before this is approved. So that's kind of where I kind of sit at the moment, and would like your feedback, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to voice my concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Schrader. Did you give us your address?
Oh, sorry. No, that's 17 Wiswall Street.
Great, thank you. I can answer some of those questions according to my memory, which is clearly not fabulous tonight. I do not recall at all that there was a 6-month moratorium on this when we held it in October. My sense of that meeting was Ascend came in and thought it was going to go pretty quickly, and neighbors raised all these compliance with past conditions, and so we tried to give them time to address them, and 4 months have passed and they have been addressing them. So I don't remember anything about 6 months. Is your fear that now that they will be providing marijuana or cannabis to medical patients as well as recreational clients, that the parking lot will suddenly become inadequate? Is that what you're worried about here?
Well, I feel that, so currently I feel that the parking is already inadequate, and my concerns are that with this additional permit, if it's going to create additional foot traffic, cars, whatever, it's not going to improve in any way. Either way, if it's driving more foot traffic, it could be driving more cars. We already see that there's an issue with parking because we're experiencing it and living it. So my concern is there something to be reevaluated there about what was approved for parking and what really probably is needed? Does that make sense?
Yes, perhaps the planning department would like to address that question.
I think in the analysis, it shows that the additional use of the medical treatment center does not have a higher parking requirement. So that is contemplated in the ordinance, and the applicant has met their parking requirement as set forth in the ordinance as a control on the parking on site.
Thank you, Ms. Wewell. I'll just say, it's not data-driven, but anecdotal, and I'm there and have been there quite a lot recently, especially since October with this. I have never seen the parking lot full, ever. Often it is less than half full. Perhaps, Ms. Schrader, you have a different perspective from Wiswall. I
do. And I think you're absolutely correct. I do, living here and driving in and out of there, driving in and out of and around there. I even walk over to Trader Joe's. So I have absolutely, in fact, seen the parking lot full, no spaces available, people parked on the street, and then people coming back and seeing people parking on our street. So I have absolutely seen it quite a few times, or I wouldn't feel. It's enough that I feel confident to raise it with you this evening.
You have every right and perspective to do that. We appreciate it. I just was mentioning my perception. I think Ms. Wewell answered that from a planning perspective and a traffic count, parking allocation, it's not expected at all that adding this new use will create more traffic to the facility, but we can hear from other people on that as well. I see a couple of hands up from the committee. Councilor Lucas?
Ma'am, there's another public person, another neighbor that would like, she doesn't know how to raise her hand on here, but would also like to address the council here, if you would permit her to do so.
Sure, do you know her name?
Diane, sorry.
Diane? Would you like to speak, Diane?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I was able to raise my hand and then I was not able to unmute myself. My apologies. Diane Leal, I live on 3234 Cross Street. I share a similar concern with Jackie in a sense that I wonder if this will increase foot traffic of the volume of people going to Ascent. What would be the outcome of that, right? So if we're already talking about certain issues related to littering, concerns about receipts, we haven't even implemented yet an electronic email for receipts, right? So I guess my question is, if you do have an idea of what is the expected increase of customers going to Ascent, because I do fear that increase in foot traffic or folks driving or even walking can actually just aggravate the current issues that we are already discussing that have not 100% been resolved. Yes, have they been improved? Absolutely. But have them are they already completely resolved? Not yet. So that's really my concern, as well as Jackie said earlier.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair,
Yes.
if I could I just would like to respond to a couple of these things. First and foremost, in 2020, when the number 25 parking spaces was authorized by this committee and implemented by the applicant, it was at a time when there were far fewer dispensaries throughout the state of Massachusetts. And so the demand was only higher in 2020. It opened in December 6, 2021. Still, 3 years ago, or was that 2 years and a couple of months? But a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago, when the demand was substantially higher, because there just weren't that many places open at the time. It was taking a long time, if you recall, to get places open. So with the arrival of now, I don't know, 300-400 approved dispensaries throughout the state of Massachusetts, competition has only made it so that people are going closer to their home to shop for their products. So the numbers really should be going down in terms of the number of people coming into our parking lot. That's item number one. And the estimate is that Massachusetts predicts that 20% of the adults in Massachusetts would be consumers of cannabis. So 20% of, I don't know, 5 million maybe. So you're looking at like 1 million potential customers across the entire Commonwealth. With medical, there's the Cannabis Control Commission has only identified approximately 100,000 medical patients. They have to get a card every year, and they have to renew that card, and they have to pay for that card. You really have to be committed to want to get to be a patient. My wife is a patient because she has Crohn's disease. So I know the process she goes through, but it's not easy. It's kind of a pain in the neck, the whole thing. But you really have to want to do it so that you can have access to the medical regime. And so it's not a huge number of people. It's 100,000 across Massachusetts. So you're not going to see this massive increase occur here at the Newton store. It just isn't going to happen. And so the final thing I'd say is that, we are very regulated. We are more regulated than any other retail business in the Commonwealth. We are more regulated than the liquor business. I would say we're more regulated than legal gambling in the Commonwealth. And I'm not so sure that that the law was intended for us to be that regulated. There is the name of this statute that was passed by Massachusetts is called an Act to Regulate Cannabis like alcohol. I'm paraphrasing. It might not be like, but an Act to Regulate Cannabis. Something, maybe it was like, but the word alcohol was in there. My point is that at some point, if these operators, if cannabis operators are treated so radically different than their retail counterparts, than liquor stores, other stores here in the Commonwealth, here in Newton, there's an equity argument that can be made. And and I think there's a balance to this entire thing. And I don't mean to get on my soapbox here, but you folks have seen me a number of times now for a number of operators. It's not the only type of clients I represent, but I do represent a fair number of them. And I think at some point there does have to be an equity argument to be made on the other side of the coin, which is why can they be treated so radically different than every other retailer in the Commonwealth and in Newton? And we are a phone call away. We're an email away. When I get an email from the planning board, when I get an email from Kat or from Kate, it goes directly to the client on whatever matter it is, and we get a response back to them. If not that day, that next morning. And if I can't get it to them right away, I tell them that I'm going to get back in touch with them. And that's pretty much part and parcel for the entire industry.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll stop talking. I apologize.
No, you're passionate, and I think you've made your point. I saw two hands of people who had already spoken from the public. Jackie Schrader, did you want to speak again? Or, thank you.
I would like to,
I don't want to have a back and forth conversation. If you have something new to ask that hasn't been touched on before, please go ahead. And we're going to try and wrap this up because it's almost 10 o'clock.
Yes, ma'am. I think the only other really thing that we have that nobody has talked about here is us as neighbors. It feels that we have been put in a position that we are our neighborhood watch, and puts us in a precarious situation as we report these. I know Mr. Tekler had an incident. He is not the only person that had an incident where a repeating person came back and I got glared down. And I have to say that me being the bad guy, putting me in that position that I have to wonder if I'm going to have any retribution from any of these customers has been something that has worried me over the last few months. As I get the actions, we want them to be taken, but I have seen and I have experienced where I felt unsafe. And yes, we called the police and they were gone by the time they got here. But again, it was an unknown position and it's an uncomforting place to be. So I would hope that the resolutions could bring us out of this so that we would feel safe in our homes and not have to worry about somebody coming back because they got mad about the way this was handled. And I think that's the only other piece that's driving a lot of us to feel that we need to be here and speak up. So again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to voice my concerns very much, counselors, and I appreciate all that you do.
Thank you, Ms. Schrader. I think now, unless there are other comments from the public, we will like to take it into committee. I've seen several hands up. I started before. We're going to go back to Councilor Lucas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll try my absolute best to be brief because I do know it's literally 10 o'clock right now. I'll address the parking situation. I live around the corner from Garden Remedies, and Garden Remedies, as you know, is both recreational and medical. The parking lot is much smaller than the parking lot at Ascend. And there is also street parking on Washington Street by Garden Remedies, as there is by Ascend. Parking has been a non-issue at Garden Remedies. So for the folks who think that it's going to be filled with cars, because if this petition is approved for medical, there is no basis to that assumption. It just isn't. I had many concerns about the parking, as Mr. Ross knows, and customers when Garden Remedies came through a couple of years ago, and it just, all of my fears did not happen at all. That being said, there are, some neighborhood issues, and I will ask Mr. Ross, are you and your client in communication constantly with the neighbors on Wiswall and Cross Street and Washington Street?
Yeah, really, Matt is the one who's been doing the work and talking to the community. Yes.
Okay, good. Because I do want them to be respected, and I do want their concerns to be addressed. regarding not necessarily parking in the neighborhood streets, because I know that's difficult for you, but as far as trash, loitering, other neighborhood issues, it's great that you're in communication with them. You did state in your presentation that you have, I think you have new internal store policies. And just wondering, how do employees know about those policies?
I can answer that one, Mike. Yeah, so when those got developed, those will be sent out by, and we work in coordination with the retail team. We took the feedback from the October meeting and had some of the retail leaders write up new protocols for everyone to follow, and then they did education with the staff and things like that. So everyone in the store is aware of these new procedures.
Okay, and they're posted somewhere within the store?
That's a good question. I can ask exactly if they're posted. I know that there's training. I don't know if those rules stay somewhere. It's a pretty long document.
Okay.
It's multiple pages long, so I don't know if it would be posted. It's probably a document that's given to new hires and existing employees, as it is multiple pages long.
Okay, I understand. But just as new employees come on board, I just want to make sure they are fully informed of what the rules are for your establishment. Those are my questions for the evening, and I know this is your ward. So when ready, I will make a motion to close the public hearing and move for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Councillor Leary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in full agreement with my colleague, Councillor Lucas, with his comments. I want to just remind everyone what we're doing here is actually just allowing medical marijuana at an already existing site, and I'm confident that there's not going to be any significant parking issues, and I share the chair's observations that I've never seen that parking lot full. It's also a big commercial corridor with parking on Washington Street. I really think parking is not really the issue. It sounds like there might be other things, maybe people who aren't behaving well or littering issues that still need to be addressed. But I don't think parking is really the thing we need to be concerned about here. I actually am pleased that they're offering medical marijuana. As a former medical marijuana patient myself, there were few options. I do want to say to Mr. Ross that I did find that places who are medical marijuana seem to cater to the recreational crowd and often don't have very much product for medical marijuana. That was just my experience. So I hope you will take it seriously, that you will cater to medical marijuana patients who really do benefit from medical marijuana for their own improvement in their condition and pain. I also want to remind people that this has always been a commercial space, and I'm committed to seeing commercial spaces thrive. They do create jobs, they provide service, and they pay taxes to the city. So regarding the litter, I'm very happy that Ascend is working on picking up litter. As a matter of fact, I would like to require employees to walk properties and pick up litter at every Starbucks, every 7-Eleven, every Dunkin' Donuts, and every liquor store in the city, because it is a huge problem. And it's certainly not just Ascend or medical marijuana or marijuana establishments that have that problem. But that's another discussion. So I will be in favor of allowing medical marijuana on this site. Thank you.
Councillor Block.
I'll be brief, thank you. I want to recognize Ms. Schrader's comment about her seeing the parking lot full. Someone who lives in the immediate vicinity is going to pass this parking lot far more often than all of us probably put together. So I think it's entirely possible that that lot is 100% utilized from time to time. And this, it seems to me, begs for some data. How can we get data, and whose job would it be to collect the data on how often is this parking lot full? It's just, a question that I'd really love to know. Cameras are very inexpensive. And it'd be nice if perhaps the planning department would consider how we could collect data on the utilization of this lot. That doesn't mean that the proposal that's before us tonight would affect that. But if it is 100% utilized, even 2-3% of the time, that could get worse. We don't know whether it'll get worse because of a medical marijuana dispensary or just because of increased utilization in the state of Massachusetts. So I think we should try and do something about that. Thank you.
Interesting. Any other comments from the committee? Planning, perhaps Ms. Wewell. Well, is there anything about data collection of parking lot use that you would like to mention? And while you think about that, I'll say I have been in touch with particularly the Wiswall Street neighbors a lot over this. And it's not necessarily that the parking lot is full when they experience parking problems on their street. They actually think that sometimes it's people who don't want to be seen in the parking lot who park on their street. So there's a theory there. So it's not necessarily that the parking lot is empty, but that people may be choosing to park on the side street rather than in the lot or on Washington Street, which involves taking your life in your hands to run across if you have to go with the crosswalk. But Ms. Wewell, do you have thoughts on Councilor Block's question about data collection of the use of the parking lot?
Yeah, I don't think data collection is something the planning department would initiate. However, if the applicant wanted to submit parking utilization data, we've sort of gone over that when there is parking related relief being sought, such as a larger parking waiver. They'll use a parking demand study on, and counts on their own property to provide that to planning. However, this petition does not have any parking related relief required here. And it seems like it's something unique to this use. It's not something we've imposed on any other use in the city, unless they've been asking for permission for something related to parking, like to provide less stalls than needed. That is a larger number, but it's not something the planning department would initiate. It would be something we collect from the applicant and then review and provide to the committee for their deliberation.
Thank you, Ms. Wewell. So Mr. Ross and Mr. McKenna, would you see any way that collecting data on the usage of your parking lot would be easy and or helpful from your perspective?
I think that the camera data that's accessible would be something that we'd be happy to provide if that's helpful.
Might be. Well, let's continue to have this conversation. I'd like us to try and wrap this up tonight. If there are no further comments from the Land Use Committee or the public, I'm just going to say a couple of things at the end here. I think because there is no precedent for seeing an increase in usage at these facilities when they add medical patients, and there's no change in the hours, there's no physical change to the building, I think that it is, as planning said earlier, very unlikely to add more negative impacts. And again, if it happens, we can always revisit things. The neighborhood outreach that Matt McKenna has been doing has been really excellent. I haven't seen many petitioners do such a good job as this man for this group is doing. I would encourage him to reach out to Jacqueline Schrader and to Diane, because I don't think they have been part of the neighbor group that has been in touch with him, and I think they would find that very helpful. So let's arrange to make that happen at the end of all this. I have talked with Mr. Ross and Mr. McKenna about the appropriate type of plants to replace the dead plants in the rain garden with, so let's hope that that gets reassessed and appropriate plants are put in, not the ones that are on the list that was provided earlier. I think the email receipts option, if you can get that to work through your whole network and through Douchy or whatever, would be great. And I think that I do not believe that this will have a negative impact on the neighborhood, and I'm very happy that they have in place this liaison person who can help on an ongoing basis with neighbor concerns around disruption in the parking lot or parking or litter or whatever happens. So I think the time is here for us to take up Councilor Lucas on his offer to make a motion to close the public hearing. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. I assume no one opposed. Say no if you're opposed. And your motion is to?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Let's take a look at the council order, proposed council order.
So for findings, we have one, the site is an appropriate location for the proposed medical marijuana treatment center due to its location in the business to zoning district and proximity to a mix of land uses in Newton. Because no exterior changes are proposed, the addition of the MTC use will fit in at the existing location with minimal changes to the site. 2, the amendment to Council Order 6720 to allow a marijuana treatment center will not adversely affect the neighborhood because it is similar in nature to the existing retail use on the site. The addition of medical marijuana treatment will provide more options for residents in need of medical treatment, and the standard operating procedures for the establishment will mitigate potential nuisances. 3, the amendment to allow a medical treatment center will not create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. There's no change proposed to the access, parking, and layout of the site, which is operating in a safe manner for vehicles and pedestrians. And 4, access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved. For the findings specific to a marijuana establishment, the lot is designed such that it provides convenient, safe, and secure access and egress for clients and employees arriving to and leaving from the site, whether driving, bicycling, walking, or using public transportation due to its location on Washington Street, with transit service and a provision of bicycle racks for bicyclists and a crosswalk for pedestrians. Loading, refuse, and service areas are designed to be secure and shielded from abutting uses. The medical marijuana treatment center in an existing marijuana establishment is designed to minimize any adverse impacts on abutters. The center is in an existing marijuana establishment has satisfied all of the conditions and requirements in the section. The lot location complies with section 6.10.3.f.1. Traffic generated by client trips, employee trips, and deliveries to and from the center will not create a significant adverse impact on nearby uses. The building and site have been designed to be compatible with other buildings in the area and to mitigate any aesthetic impacts that might result from security measures and restrictions on visibility to the building's interior. The structure complies with transparency requirements. The building and site are accessible to persons with disabilities. The lot is accessible to regional roadways and public transportation. The lot is located where it may be readily monitored by law enforcement, and the hours of operation will have no significant adverse impact on nearby uses. For conditions, it's just recording the change to the special permit to allow this use.
Thank you, Ms. Kemet. We are ready to vote.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Downs, Counselor Farrell,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And we are adjourned.
Thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.